Morning, everybody. It is a Saturday, the 24th. No, what am I talking about? It's going to be the 14th of March. Where'd that come from? 15th of March, because St. Patrick's Day, right? This is the parade day, and St. Patrick's is the 17th, the high holy day. So let's start again. Saturday, March 15th, 2025. Good old 710 KNUS. There's going to be more snow in the mountains. 49 will be the high. Warmer and breezy tomorrow. Might get the sickle out, 62. And then on Monday, patio weather, man, 70 degrees. Coming up, we will, through a translator and through where the locations where these two men are, they are Venezuelans, and they're in this country. And they're going to talk, and they're going to take calls, and this should be quite a show. Joe from Arvada, my man, how are you? Do we have Joe turned up? Joe from Arvada, are you there?
Peter, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Well, my first question for these guys, and I mean it, I hope you ask it, and I hope you ask it with temerity. Who did you vote for? And I don't want any preliminary questions because I just want to see
Joe,
if off the cuff they'll admit it.
Joe, stop right here, right now.
You're
not. Just listen to me. You're not going to dictate how the show works. Now, what is the question that you want? Who did they vote for?
Who did you vote for? Yep. Did you vote for Biden? Did you vote for Trump? No other precursors, because I don't want to key off the person.
You're assuming they voted.
See, that's what I want you to do. And
Joe,
the reason I want
stop.
you to do that, if they didn't vote, they'll tell you.
Joe, stop. You can't. What kind of a talk show host would allow you to dictate how the show is done?
Well, I'm just suggesting to you, Peter.
That's not what you said.
Try to have an open mind.
For what?
Well, to ask a very simple question.
I want to move on.
Who did you vote for?
Is there anything else you'd like to?
Well, the second question is, okay, if you didn't vote, what did you do with your ballot?
See, this is this assumption of the stolen election that they were given ballots.
Why don't you try it?
Well,
no, because you can't. You don't have the temerity.
Hey, Joe, someday you're going to step way out of line. You know that? You are. And,
I'm stepping in line with Donald Trump. You are not. And here's the thing. You don't recognize that the 2020 election was stolen, and it's going to be proven,
hey, Joe,
and you're going to have to admit it.
Hey, Joe, why do you think, after the lies that were told on this radio station, why do you think, no, listen to me, why do you think that it's been announced that Newsmax paid $40 million to Dominion?
Because just like I said in the last time you asked me this, they didn't have the guts to stand up and fight. They didn't have the guts to stand up and fight. They caved into the lawyers. That's what they did.
Rupert Murdoch, 787.
That's exactly right.
You take care of yourself, Joe. Get some help. All right, I'm sick of that crap. No one tells you how to do a radio show. Who's next? 303-696-1971. This week, and it was the lies that were told, this week, Newsmax, that was started by a friend of mine by the name of Chris Ruddy, paid $40 million to Dominion. They also were going to pay Smartmatic because that next lawsuit is coming. Rupert Murdoch, one of the toughest of all-time media barons, paid $787.5 million, and Joe said because these people don't have the guts. Rupert Murdoch, $787. Chris Ruddy, $40 million. Do you think for a second that those people with that power, why didn't they come and get Mike Lindell? Why didn't they come and get Sharona Bishop, America's mom? Why didn't they come and get that idiot Rudolph Giuliani? Why didn't they come and get the Kraken? Why didn't they bring them into those courtrooms and say, why didn't they go get Joe from Arvada and bring Joe in instead of paying that because they're afraid? No, because the lies were told and they're caught. Now, I don't know what to tell you. And I'm certainly not going to do a radio show like that. So it is your turn, 303-696-1971. The swatting of Joe Pags, I thought was really an interesting development this week in talk radio. I guess it may have happened at the end of last week or the first part of this week. When was Pags swatted? I'm reading all of the different stuff that's out there on the internet. So swatting means, and I heard Pags talk about it. He was in his house on the phone talking to the SWAT team and saying, "Look, everything's okay. I will walk out with my hands in the air and my phone." And they sent, and again, this is now beginning. And it is wrong on so many different levels. And I think Pags is a talent. And he, if they're this run and gun stuff that's going to start, hide and watch, see what happens next. But it has nothing to the level that happened when it happened here in Denver some 40 years ago. And that's really where it jumped off. I think it's really it is a development in this business. And I think it leads to two or three different things. And one is how really important some people think, and again, now it's the left, burning Musk's electric automobiles, the Teslas, and getting even with people and going after buildings and going after Trump's building. It is really reminiscent of the 30s in Germany. And that's what happened. As if the center can't hold, it's a theory of historians and a theory of politicians who don't understand, but the historians do, and the political thinkers do. It's called when the center can't hold, and it spins off into space. And if you get that moment where the center doesn't hold, and the media, I don't know where the media is going, and what I think is really fascinating is the two big losers in November were the heritage media, the so-called heritage media, and the Democratic Party. Now, the Democratic Party was destroyed by its own far left. Now, that faction of the party is now out doing irreparable damage across the country. And to what end? How do you think that's going to end? 710 KNUS, we'll talk more. Our translator will join us. We'll talk about it. And he's not going to be on camera. I'm on camera. He has requested his name not be used because people live in fear now. And, it really is. It really is difficult. And we'll see what happens. All right, we're ready to go again? All right, we go to James. Hey, James, you're on a radio show Saturday morning, man. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Peter. I don't know why you keep letting that guy come on.
It's going to end.
Each time it's the same story every time.
Well,
I don't get it.
Someday there's a line that you cross, and then you don't come back.
Yeah. So my perception is I'm a Trump supporter, and all of that, but I'm a realist. I'm in the concrete business, and
oh boy,
everybody that works for me,
yep,
and I work alongside them, is Hispanic, and they're all legal. But they've worked hard over the last 10, 15 years to become legal. And to tell you the truth, for the most part, about 95% of them outwork Americans in the concrete business.
Wow.
They just do. So how do you get the bad ones out of the country?
Yep.
And make a path for the people that want to stay here,
yep,
pay taxes, bust their butts. Donald Trump has got to figure this out because it would be good for everyone if he could do that.
Well, I've had a conversation, and I can't speak Spanish, and these guys don't speak English. And like I said, I have just a wonderful friend here this morning who's going to, but he has a fear factor too, because everybody was worried about this doing this show, and I'm the one that says don't worry about it, And yet, we understand how the world works, especially after all of last week. But full circle, I've always said that one of the biggest proponents of open borders is the National Chamber of Commerce, which is dominated by corporate Republicans. They want the labor. You're absolutely right.
Right. And the funny thing about it is the Democrats went about it in the wrong way. They thought by bringing all these people in, we're going to vote for them. And these people just want to survive. They're busting their butts every day. Some of them, most of them, to family and, kids and all that. And I'm sure they would be more than willing to do the right thing if the right thing was presented to them. And I just do. I can't see them not.
Well, my understanding is when these guys have somewhere in the future a court date. I was given that information this morning. I don't know what that means. They'll explain it. But remember, when they came, it was Joe Biden. The doors are open. And these guys, they helped bury children. They saw people murdered. I mean, they went up against the cartels to get here. And ask yourself a question. And I'm not siding. I'm only posing. Suppose your daughter were sick, very sick, and there was help in Montana for your daughter. Would you start walking north with your daughter?
Heck yeah, I would.
Yeah.
So would you, and so would most Americans.
You wonder.
You've got to, as smart as Donald Trump is and the people around him, he's got to appease his base and the people that are here, that are willing to pay taxes, work, and be honest. The rest of them can go. See ya.
Thank you, man. Very good call. Thank you very much. All right, we go to Jack. Jack, you're on a radio show. It's a Saturday morning. Thanks for calling. It's 9:36.
No, I just jumped. I'm in Evergreen now. I just jumped in the car. I'm going down to Denver, but I turned, and I don't even know what the context of it was. But you said, I wonder where the media is going. I think it's a past tense issue. I think the media is gone. I don't think they have any credibility whatsoever, and I don't know of anybody with a brain that listens to them. Well, that's all I have to say.
Well, but it's transferred. It's transferred to podcasting. It's transferred to
Rogan.
Different sites. And I mean, there's a reason. Lester Holt, who I thought was a decent man. Lester Holt's out. They replaced Lester Holt. And again, there's a radio station in Santa Barbara, California. This is from the trades and from my partner Dirk, that I understand it's Spanish language, and they were helping illegals. And now they're being given a proctology exam by the FCC. It's Donald Trump's FCC. And
yes,
and so everything that we do today in this business is now scrutinized to the bare bones. Threats are made. Threats are carried out.
But Pete, none of that was necessary when Gabriel Heater was on the air.
Well, but those guys, you can say what you want to say about that time period, but they loved the country. They supported the president. One of the reasons Jack Kennedy got away with everything that Jack Kennedy got away with those guys, and it was all men with one exception, all white men with one exception, in the press corps, and they had lived the Second World War. They were rounders like Jack Kennedy. He was their guy. They were going to burn. And FDR is meeting with his mistress in Hot Springs, in Warm Springs. I always say Hot Springs. That's Clinton. In Warm Springs. And they would pull, the press cars would pull off, onto a side rail, and the press would sit there and they'd drink and play poker and FDR would visit his mistress. They knew but what was greater, at stake was the country because of the Second World War. So today, all of that's out the window. And they will do things to destroy Trump that would help the country, but would help Trump, and they can't do that. It's so crazy right now.
Well, they're all dirt diggers. They're hoping to get stuff out of it. They're all trying to use it for leverage to put. It's not about being constructive. It's about being destructive and putting the other person down.
Well, what used to be ratings and revenue and circulation and all that kind of stuff, it's gone. And these guys that bought newspapers that thought they were going to show you how it's done, they can't do it. The networks are slipping and sliding and diminished. And ask yourself legitimately, when is the last time you watched the local news on Channel 9?
Pete, I have never owned a television in my life. I've got a library card.
Yep.
And my oldest son, who graduated in '90 from CU, my oldest son, John, he has never in his entire life owned a television.
There you go.
Okay?
They don't have to.
We decide what we want. We seek it out and we read it. We don't look television. Moynihan called it boob bait for the bubbas.
We're coming back. Hang on, everyone. It's going to be a big morning. Starts at 10, 710 KNUS. Glenn Travis Campbell. For the late Chuck Seraph, this was his song. Good morning, everyone. This is going to be one of those mornings. It's Saturday. The interpreter is sitting next to me, and he's off camera. I am on the YouTube camera. 49 the high, 62 on Sunday. Monday, 70 degrees. We'll go to the phones. We go to Dwayne in Divide, Colorado. Hey, brother, man. Good morning. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for putting me on, sir. As a first-generation American, and I know I pound that drum a lot on the station, I feel for every person that comes up, and I agree that there are some people who work far harder than anybody else. Even the guys sometimes who own the business don't work as hard as some of the employees. But unfortunately, with the breaking of the laws, I've just got to sit there and say, we've got to sit there and just say, it's time for you to go. But I agree with the caller that maybe the people who are clean, honest, and doing what they can, raising a family, that maybe we can give them some sort of a gold pass or something that we can sit there and say, okay, you don't have the 10-year waiting and everything else. Let's work with that. I know a German lady, she's 20 years, married to an American, 2 children. Her grandkids are both going to MIT. And it's like, yeah, she's done a great contribution to the society, but she still doesn't have her citizenship. It's crazy to sit there and think it takes 20 years to get past that.
Well, the focus is now, seemingly now, on the Venezuelans. And if you know about Hugo Chavez and about Nicolas Maduro, and there was the Bolivian Revolution, and Chavez did everything he could to screw up a wonderful place. And these people started here, but the most significant thing that we're going to hear from these guys is when they came, the gate was open.
Oh, yeah.
When they crossed. And the crisis, and by the way, Cuban exiles, Syrian refugees, I mean, the list goes on. The Bolivian government has denied any migratory crisis, but in fact, that's happening as well. So I'm just a reader, a little bit of a traveler, but hundreds of Venezuelans are waiting to see, excuse me, Colombian National Police are leading the Venezuelans into Colombia. Airline passengers are leaving Venezuela. I mean, it's insane. And
yes. I did my tours down through Colombia, okay, Salvador, Honduras, and everywhere else. And Venezuela was gorgeous. Oh. And then all of a sudden it went commie, and then Petrobras and everything else got blown out. And now they're eating the zoology animals and everything. And it's like, could we not see this? Do you not see the future for this country 4 years ago? And it was just like, oh, no, it's better for everybody. I understand. Listen, as you said, go to Montana. Hell, I'd have gone up to Alaska for my boy.
Well, in the 20th century, Venezuela was the haven for immigrants fleeing the old world, the repression in the old world and intolerance. And immigration began at low rates in '83 after the oil prices collapsed, and then the rates of immigration, and then, of course, the Bolivian Revolution, which led to Hugo Chavez. And as you pointed out, it's game over.
And there's just no way that people can seem to understand when you're offered peace, bread, and shelter.
Yeah, sure.
You're not going to sit there and say, no, I think I want to work real hard and not have as much. When you're offered your nirvana, you're going to run for it, but it has never, ever been produced.
Both of these men, from my understanding, are very devout Catholics. They send what money they can make. They send it home. And who would be the person in Denver to say, you got to get out? At the same time, I watched what the mayor has done with the homeless people. I mean, it really, and this idea, one of the things I think, and again, I'm only talking through people. My partner this morning sitting here has already spoken with him. It wouldn't matter if I spoke with him or not. But like I said, if I put myself in their shoes, what would I do?
And I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, we have to come up with a better way.
Absolutely.
Because they're in the shadows. Whatever taxes they're paying are sales tax on different items. They're not paying income tax. I know 2 painters out down here in Colorado Springs have great crews. These guys bust out a house in 2 days versus 6, but all of them are being paid under the table. All of them have no papers whatsoever to be in this country legally. And do you roast this guy? Because he's trying to feed a family.
Well, they're waiting. They're waiting. I'm going to mic you up. If you? This is our translator this morning. He's not on screen. He's not using his name. What are they waiting for now? They have a court date coming. Is that your understanding? You can talk. Your mic's lit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My understanding is that they do have a court date.
Yeah.
And that's what they're waiting for.
Yeah. Okay. What's your sense so far? You've talked to them for about a half an hour this morning. What's your sense of these 2 men?
My personal sense of who they are, I personally think they're very sincere.
Okay.
And I think they have a story to tell, and I'm excited to broadcast that to the world.
Yeah, man. So we've lost our callers. We've lost everybody. Do we take a break? Is that what we do now? I'm looking. This is it's 9:51. We got 9 minutes to go. Oh, we got callers. We got a caller. So we finished. We'll take Ben in Denver. Hey, Ben, you waited the longest. Thank you. You're on the radio show. Good morning.
Good morning, Peter.
Hey, man.
So we were up in North Denver, and there was this group that were down on Zuni and Spear, and someone in our church body saw the cold and the poverty and the migrants, because it's a sanctuary city. But our church opened the doors for families. The fire department allowed 30 families to stay in the church. We had showers and beds. So the Bible teaches us, a part of me is, well, sometimes I think we're tested. I think there was a window of time where you have to show compassion and love. And our church did that, and I was proud of that.
Yeah. What do you do with all of this? I mean,
yeah,
like so many people, I'm as confused as anyone else about the issue. I won't read the texts, but you should read some of these texts. They're really, and I don't know how you do it. And yet I know what's happened has happened.
There's a window of time. I think we get tested, and we have to show, because it could be you someday, Pete. We have 3 at-risk kids, and one's on the lam as an 18-year-old, and that's somebody's child. And he's going to grow up someday and maybe come back into the fold. But these people were forced out, and part of it is survival. Part of it is just a better life.
I'm going to hear them.
But you can't invade Venezuela either, because you don't want to start a war. But I don't know.
I don't have an answer, but we do have a radio show straight ahead, and someday when the book is written, but this man came to my rescue, and he's sitting here with me this morning. So, and it was interesting because there was a big, as they said growing up, a conglomerate that wanted to be part of it, and suddenly yesterday morning pulled out. So, and I can't, and I'm reading the trades about the radio station in Santa Barbara, and but they were doing more than just talking about this. They were showing people where to hide, and now the FCC is on them. So a lot of people live in fear. So there it is. We will see what happens next. Listen, thank you, and thank you for listening this morning. It means a lot. Thank you. All right, we have a minute to go. So let me reset this. This started when I got a phone call from another great friend who talked about these 2 men are here from Venezuela, and they want to speak, and they don't speak English. So I had to go through a lot of clearing, and someday I said when the story is written, I'll talk about, we had a guest spiked, as they say in the business, a week ago who was going to come on, and the radio and the conglomerate said, no, I don't want that guy on the air. So I went to the bosses, and then we went through a whole part of somebody else we're going to help, and then they pulled out, and a man has come to the rescue, and someday I'll be able to thank him publicly. Get ready. Here we go. And good morning, everyone. This is a one-of-a-kind, very special morning. We've done a lot of different things with talk radio, and this is one more. It is Saturday, March the 15th, 2025, 710 KNUS Denver's talk station, 710 KNUS Weather Center weather. 49 will be the high today, 62 tomorrow, and 70 on Monday. Let me tell you how this show now comes together. Actually, the prime mover in this is sitting in the studio with us as well. Got a call from an old friend, and he said, I am working with some people that are here illegally or legally, and wasn't sure, from Venezuela. And I had just come out of the hospital, and I thought, why don't we put these guys on the radio show? And we talked, and he said, well, let me check. And long story, they said yes. And we had to be very careful. And even, in fact, I've been invited to come and meet them. But management, before management left this morning, said, I would rather that you don't go. And taking that Richard Nixon position of plausible deniability. And it's true for our interpreter. And so we had a couple of interpreters lined up to do this as well. And then I said, when the book is written, all of a sudden, out of the clear blue of the western sky, it gets yanked. So I'm really in a tailspin. What am I going to do? And from a couple of dear old friends who worked Spanish language radio, they brought up a name, and I said, well, yeah. And he is here with us now as well. And I'm going to bring him on, and no names are being used and people are being blacked out, but you made this happen.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. So without further ado, Adam, you want to bring our guest on? We have decided for our side of this, we will say 1 and 2, and the interpreter will take it from there. First of all, welcome them and thank them, and ask them if they'd individually tell their stories about how and why they got here. So actually, this show is now yours. So if you would welcome them to the station and welcome them to the show, and begin to ask them how they got here and what they got here and how they did it.
Muy buenos días al invitado número 1 y número 2. Gracias por estar con nosotros en este programa. Le queremos preguntar a los dos si nos pueden contar su historia, cómo y cuándo y por qué vinieron para aquí. Podemos empezar con el invitado número 1.
Buenos días, muchas gracias por la invitación, gracias por tomarnos en cuenta y agradecido a todos realmente.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the invite for today. Thank you for having us in mind. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Ask them to tell their ages and what they did for a living when they lived in Venezuela.
¿Nos puede decir sus edades y qué hacían ustedes cuando vivían en Venezuela?
Bueno, un placer. Yo en mi país me dedicaba, aparte de estudiar, trabajaba en lo que es la construcción. Tengo la edad de 32 años.
So in my country, I was a student, but I also worked in construction. I'm 32 years old.
And the other man?
¿Y el otro señor?
Bueno, buenos días, un placer. Yo fui militar en mi país, tengo 34 años.
Well, good morning. I was a soldier in my country. I'm 34 years old.
What was his job in the army, in the Venezuelan army?
¿Cuál era su trabajo en el ejército venezolano?
Fui sargento de la Marina.
I was in the Marines.
Yeah, I heard him say that. How long was he in, and why did he? Was he in the Corps when Chavez was running the country, or Maduro was running the country?
So, ¿cuánto tiempo usted estuvo en la Marina y usted estaba en la Marina mientras que Chávez estaba en control del país o Maduro? Chavez.
Why did he leave? Why did he leave, and why did he come here? And I understand they walked here.
¿Y por qué se fue usted? ¿Y por qué se fue? Yo tengo el entendido que ustedes caminaron hacia aquí.
Sí, yo me retiré yo duré casi 9 años en la Marina. Estuve en la fragata General Suble 24 en Puerto Cabello. Y sí, nosotros caminamos primera vez que yo emigro. Este es el primer país donde yo emigro.
So I was in the Marines for 9 years. I was a rank around L2P, and I was stationed in a place called Puerto Cabello. And yeah, we did walk a lot. We walked a lot. This is the first time I ever immigrated anywhere.
Why?
¿Por qué?
¿Cómo?
What do you mean?
Why did you come?
¿Por qué vino usted?
Para tener a mi familia más estable.
So that I can take care of my family.
His family back in Venezuela.
¿Y usted tiene familia en Venezuela?
Y toda mi familia está en Venezuela.
Yes, my entire family is in Venezuela.
Both of the men.
Y los dos, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Yes.
How long did it take to get here?
¿Cuánto tiempo tardaron en llegar aquí?
Yo voy para 3 años aquí en Estados Unidos. Pero Rubén...
Were they?
¿Aló?
So I have been in the United States for about 3 years. Adelante.
Oh, wow. He's been, how long? Both of these guys have been here that long?
Y entonces los dos han estado aquí por 3 años.
No, yo tengo más que él.
No, I've been here longer than him.
Yo voy para 3 años.
I've been here 3.
One of the things that from my reading is that men like him, people like him, folks like him, from not only from Venezuela but from other parts of Latin and Central America, were told to come. They were lured. Choice of words may be wrong, but they were told to come here, that it was going to be okay. Is that true? Is that what they were told?
Una de las cosas que yo he leído es como hombres como ustedes, hombres de Venezuela o de otros países, según lo que yo leo, le han dicho a ustedes o los atrayeron que ustedes vengan para acá o casi les pidieron que ustedes vinieran. ¿Ese viene siendo el caso?
No.
No.
They were not told to come.
Entonces ustedes no fueron llamados para venir.
No.
No.
Bueno, lamentablemente en mi país se vive una situación demasiado difícil, la cual no se conoce la realidad de todo.
So in my country, unfortunately, there's a very difficult situation, and the reality is none of you know the harsh realities of it, actually.
Yes, I know. I mean, I've read. I apologize. But there have been things that I have read that under the last administration, under the Biden administration, that there was more of a belief of being welcomed to the United States. And this is not a rap on Donald Trump because he was elected to put up that barrier, but that under the last administration, that there were things that I have read that I don't know that they're true, but throughout Central and Latin America, it was okayed to come here.
Bueno, lo que yo tengo entendido o lo que yo he leído, según la administración pasada, la administración del presidente Biden tenía una creencia, pues, que le dijeron a todos en Sudamérica que son bienvenidos aquí. Ahora yo sé que han elegido al presidente Donald Trump para poner una barrera, pero según lo que yo he leído, le repartieron a todos los países esta información de que están bienvenidos, que todos pueden venir.
Bueno, ante que todo, muchas gracias al presidente Obama, que fue el que abrió un camino, al presidente John Biden por seguir ese mismo camino, a los migrantes, y muchas gracias a las personas realmente en todos los Estados Unidos que nos han apoyado.
Well, honestly, I do want to give thanks to President Obama, who opened a path, President Biden that did open a path, and I want to thank everyone in the United States for helping us out and how they could.
But now people are being taken home and sent home. Do they worry? I know they have a court date. Do they worry about being deported?
Pero ahora yo tengo entendido que la gente está siendo mandado a casa. Yo sé que ustedes o uno de ustedes tiene una fecha para estar frente de un tribunal, pero ustedes se preocupan en ser deportados.
Sí, realmente sí, porque bueno, mi situación es un poco difícil y realmente no quisiera ser deportado a mi país porque en las noticias se dice algo, pero el país pasa otra cosa.
Yeah, and you know what? The situation is different for everyone. In my situation, I do not want to be deported to my country because what you see on the news is one thing, but the reality of the country is a totally different thing.
So he is worried.
Entonces usted sí está preocupado.
Sí.
Yes.
Both of them are?
Los dos están preocupados.
Sí.
Yes.
Yes.
What are they doing for income now? What are they doing for living?
Ahorita, ¿qué están haciendo ustedes para dinero? ¿Cómo están ganando sus ingresos?
Bueno, realmente a pesar de que estamos en un proceso legal y tenemos poco documentación legal para poder trabajar, no encontramos un trabajo estable realmente. El miedo de que el presidente Donald Trump ha arremetido contra los migrantes, el trabajo es muy escaso realmente. Nadie se quiere arriesgar a contratar un migrante.
Well, right now, we don't really have a stable job. We're in a legal process. We have very few even legal paperwork, so getting a stable job is out of the question. And I know, there's a big scare because Donald Trump has already threatened things against migrants, and nobody honestly wants to risk hiring a migrant because of that.
Do they work together? Do they work as a team? Do they go to the labor pools that I've seen and wait to be recruited to go to work for someone that day or the next day?
¿Ustedes trabajan en equipo? ¿Trabajan ustedes como en un grupo de laboradores? ¿Ustedes son reclutados? ¿Cómo trabaja eso?
No, bueno, realmente las gracias a las personas que algunos entienden nuestra situación, que realmente no venimos a hacerle daño o tal vez la dificultad de mi país ha hecho que muchos venezolanos hagan lo incorrecto por la persecución de nuestro gobierno. Pero hemos trabajado en jardinería, en casas, arreglando techo, ventanas, entre otras cosas.
Well, the reality is there's a lot of people that do understand our situation, and here's what I want to share with you. We did not come to cause any harm. We did not come to harm the country. We know coming here was probably the wrong thing to do under those laws, but we were escaping government persecution. We were escaping a very terrible government. For work, we do gardening, we do roofing, and we do other things.
When they came north, I've read some diaries of people that talked about eating wild fruit or in the garbage or standing in line. How did they eat, and how long did it take them, and why did they finally make the decision to come?
Bueno, yo cuando leo cosas en el diario, en el periódico, yo tengo entendido que mucha gente cuando viene, ellos tienen que comer, por ejemplo, fruta silvestre, comer de la basura, esperar en líneas muy largas. ¿Cuánto tiempo duraron ustedes para venir para acá y cómo sobrevivieron?
Wow. Contarle es difícil porque cada persona pasa una situación muy diferente. En algunas compaginamos, pero es difícil.
It's really hard to talk about because so many different people go through so many different things, and to really talk about it is really difficult. Adelante.
Would he not mind, because I think people need to hear that there's a part called the Darien Gap. Would he, and I've read to prep for all of this, but and I watched a video this morning it's devastating. Ask him about the Darien Gap, if you would, please.
Bueno, yo tengo entendido también y quisiera que ustedes compartan su camino para acá, pero yo tengo entendido que hay, por ejemplo, el tapón de Darién, que mucha gente cruza, que yo he visto un video o videos acerca de eso. Ustedes pueden compartir cómo fue su experiencia en eso.
Bueno, para mí fue una experiencia muy difícil, porque, o sea, no todos tenemos la misma experiencia vivida en el trayecto.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, that was a very hard experience. And the reality is not everyone has the same lived experience when you're going through that.
Tell the folks where the gap is and why is it so significant. And it's called the walk through hell. And I don't know, can't speak Spanish, but it's the term that I've read.
Pero dígale a la audiencia, ¿cómo fue su experiencia caminando por este tapón de Darién? Muchos dicen que esto es como en el camino, le dicen el camino al infierno. No sé si ustedes pueden compartir más detalles de eso.
Please.
Por favor.
If you're just joining us, it's Saturday morning, March the 15th on 710 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyles. And with me in studio is our interpreter. You can hear his voice. And the other two are men from Venezuela. And I've been reading and probably reading the worst of it, but the travel. And both of these men, they walked here. Did I understand that correctly, that they walked here? So, yes, they did walk here. How long did it take them to walk here?
Yeah, ¿cuánto duraron? ¿Cuánto tiempo duraron para caminar hasta acá?
Nothing. Did we lose our connect? No, we don't. They're both there. And they ask them with apologies of these areas that they just don't want to talk about.
Lo siento mucho, pero esta es una área de la cual ustedes no quieren hablar.
We lost them?
Bueno.
They're there. Go ahead.
Sí, adelante.
Yo duré 7 meses aproximadamente, creo que más tiempo, para poder llegar acá a los Estados Unidos.
Adelante.
Y le puedo decir en pocas palabras que al tapón del Darién pueden entrar en un día 1,000 personas, pero de esas 1,000 personas tenga en cuenta que saldrán solo 400.
It took me 7 months, give or take, to get to the United States.
7 months. 7 months. I'm being told I have a minute do we have to pause? Did he say 7 months or did you?
7 months, and I will tell you just in a short phrase, on any given day when you go into the Darien Gap, 1,000 people can go in, but only 400.
No, I've read about the Darien Gap. All right, let me do this. Tell them we're going to put them on hold and we're taking a commercial break.
Yeah. Vamos a tomar una pequeña pausa para comerciales y vamos a descansar un poco.
Everybody hang on. 303-696. We're not going to, you know what, I just dawned on me. Text me your questions. Text me your questions on the Dan Caplis so you can do it that way and you can get it to us and then we can ask them because you can imagine how much is tied up right now. 710 KNUS. Come right back after this. Hang on. Remember this guy? John Austin Paycheck. Bob Lee and I emceed him at the Four Seasons. I got stories about that for the book, but there he is. Johnny Paycheck. 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station, and during the break, we, not me, but the team, as well as the interpreter, made some changes and things I think are going to pick up from here. So good morning, everyone. It's going to be 49, and tomorrow 62 and 70 on Monday. Danny Caplis, I actually spoke with Dan this week. Dan suggests that you should choose a lawyer when something happens who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you and everyone involved in the case. And we've talked about Dan's life growing up. His dad was a cop. We've talked about the kindness of his mom. And he's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. And Dan's believed to be the only attorney in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Danny also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law, official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avs. Dan Caplis Law, serious firm for serious cases. Danny accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. So he represents good people from all walks of life without regard to pay, and Danny will step in and watch what happens next. So if you need his help, it's just simply a phone call, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. It's Caplis Law, 303-770-5551. If you just joined us, this takes place, it starts back, I was in the hospital about a couple weeks ago, and a good friend of mine called me and told me about these 2 men from Venezuela, and it came from there. We found just a wonderful interpreter, and these men are with us on the phone, and we were talking about the Darien Gap, and then I'm getting question marks. Well, the Darien Gap is I think it's about 60 miles, and it's a roadless stretch of rainforest, and I watched a video of it this morning, and it straddles the Colombia-Panama border, and it serves only an overland path that connects Central and South America, and it's very treacherous. I mean, it must be just, I've been told it's hell, and it's this region that connects America's continent, stretching from southern Panama, Darien province, in the northern portion of Colombia's, in the country of Colombia. To my interpreter, if we go back to the guys, and I would like to go back to them talking about crossing the Darien Gap. So, if you would, please.
Eso, queremos regresar con ustedes hablando acerca de cómo fue el viaje mientras que ustedes cruzaron el tapón del Darién. Por favor, adelante.
Bueno, cuando se entra a la selva, se tiene en cuenta de que corre peligro tu vida, pero la situación de Venezuela es peor. O sea, ya no te interesa lo que pasa en la selva, sino huir de lo que estás viviendo.
So, when you get to the jungle, you know that your life's at risk, but the reality is living in Venezuela is much worse. So that's the reason why a lot of people would rather endure going through the jungle than to go back. Adelante.
Tal vez las personas no tengan muy clara lo que está sucediendo ahí, pero en mi experiencia yo pude ver muchas personas muertas en carpas, en el río, entre árboles, animales devorando a las personas. No es mentira lo que se vive en la jungla.
And not many people know this, but my experience is when I've gone into the jungle, I've seen bodies everywhere, dead bodies on trees, in bushes, in creeks, animals eating other people's bodies. It's just a horrific sight.
Who is doing the murdering?
¿Y quién los está matando?
Bueno, el hambre las enfermedades, la necesidad. Bueno, las personas se atreven a correr todo este simple riesgo simplemente porque realmente el gobierno de Venezuela está ejecutando todo esto, está obligando a las personas a salir, personas mayores, niños, mujeres embarazadas. En mi experiencia, yo vi cómo personas morían, se accidentaban y simplemente no los puedes ayudar. La impotencia que siente a tener que dejarlos, porque si cargas un muerto, puede que caiga otro vivo, entonces es difícil hacer eso.
So the thing that kills them, hunger, disease, and the reality is that there's a massive need in the country. People would rather risk going through the jungle than going back to Venezuela. And the reality is that the government of Venezuela obligates people to do this. They make them, the elderly, kids, the sick, all those people would rather go through the jungle than to suffer through the government. And the hard part is, if you're with a family member and they're one of these things, elderly, kids, pregnant women, you can't even carry them, because if you do, you risk yourself becoming one of those bodies as well.
I've read that you can pay to have someone take you through the gap as much as $4,000 to bring you through that 60 miles. Is it so?
Yo he leído que una persona le puede pagar a otra persona alrededor de $4,000 para que los puedan guiar por ese pasaje de 100 kilómetros. ¿Eso es cierto?
Bueno, no es tan cierto ni es tan mentira. ¿Qué le explico? Las personas hoy en día venden sus casas, sus bienes, todo lo que tienen para reunir aproximadamente unos $5,000 y emprender el camino. De hecho, en el camino podemos conseguir lo que nosotros denominamos guía, pero es hasta un cierto límite. La realidad es que esa persona tampoco se va a arriesgar por dinero a morir. O sea.
So here's the thing. When you're there, people that want to come here will sell everything. They'll sell their homes, they'll sell their possessions, and they'll gather around, we'll call it $5,000. When you've got that $5,000 stored up, you can go and you can hire someone, but they're more of just a guide. They also have their limits. They will not risk themselves. They will not risk their lives for that kind of money.
They're coyotes.
For any money. So,
they're the coyotes?
Son coyotes.
Yes, son coyotes.
Yes.
Son personas que en la seguridad de ellos te van a cobrar una cantidad, la que ellos decidan. Lamentablemente no podemos cuestionar eso, pero en la seguridad de ellos, ya la seguridad de nosotros importa muy poco.
Yes, and these are people that worry about their own security or their own safety. So here's the thing. They dictate how much they charge. We have no say in that. They will dictate it. But when you hire them with the understanding that they are more worried about their safety and their well-being than us. We don't matter after that.
What happens to the bodies in the gap?
Entonces, ¿qué pasan con los cuerpos que están en el tapón?
Simplemente la naturaleza los toma. Se los comen los animales, el río los deshace, la lluvia, el frío, el calor, y hasta que desaparezcan.
Honestly, nature takes them. You know, the rivers take them, animals feed off of them, cold, heat, all of that until they disappear.
Where did they cross? Where did you guys cross into the U.S.?
¿Y ustedes, por dónde cruzaron ustedes al Estados Unidos?
Bueno, yo crucé gracias al programa del presidente Jon Biden, después que tomé la iniciativa por mi familia, por lo que yo estaba viviendo, el suceso de Venezuela. Gracias a Dios entré por la aplicación CBP.
So, you know, first things first, we did come through because of President Joe Biden's programs. I had to take the initiative because I was worried about my family back in Venezuela. But when I got there, I did cross over using the app, the CBP app.
That's what I thought, yeah. So for folks that don't understand the app, would you explain that?
Ahora, para todos los que no entienden la aplicación, ¿ustedes lo pueden explicar?
Bueno, la aplicación CBP es un programa gracias a Dios, abierto en los Estados Unidos, para aquellas personas viviendo un riesgo en su país, para, como yo lo veo, un cambio de vida. La verdad, tener una mejor educación, tener una mejor salud, tener una mejor vivienda, tener derecho a vivir. Este programa se abrió para poder entrar legalmente a los Estados Unidos y empezar un proceso legal en los Estados Unidos, trabajando y creando tu nuevo hogar.
So, for those that don't know, the CBP app was developed for people that were at risk in their own countries. So, people that needed to have an improvement in health, education, and opportunities. This provided a somewhat legal way for them to come over and to start that kind of a dream, to start working hard to get those things.
Sé que se ha dicho que a los Estados Unidos están entrando delincuentes, drogadictos, asesinos, pero eso no es cierto. Yo huí de mi país y no lo digo cómodamente porque no es fácil dejar a toda tu familia atrás por simplemente darle una mejor vida, cuando la legalidad es que en tu país tú puedas vivir porque es tu país. Pero le doy gracias a Dios a este programa y que, bueno, hoy en día puedo darle un plato de comida a mi familia. Hoy puedo ayudarles a que tengan un poquito de mejor vida, la cual no se les presta en mi país.
And, you know, when people say that people come to the U.S., they're drug addicts, they're members of the cartel, they're gangsters, I don't think any of that is true. I fled my country, and it wasn't easy at all. I fled because I needed to provide a better life for my family. If I could provide that in my country, I would not have left. But these programs help me so that we can at least put a plate of food on the table for them to eat. That's why I came.
My sources tell me, number two, that you used a coyote. Is that true?
Invitado número 2, me están diciendo aquí que usted también usó un coyote. ¿Eso es cierto?
It's okay.
Está bien.
When they crossed, where in the United States did they cross over? Where'd you guys cross?
Bueno, cuando ustedes cruzaron hacia los Estados Unidos, ¿en qué parte cruzaron? ¿Dónde estuvieron cuando cruzaron?
Cuando yo crucé a Estados Unidos, le estoy hablando hace casi 3 años, yo entré por Piedra Negra. Pero mi entrada no fue por cita, no estaba todavía eso. Todavía no estaba eso. Anteriormente, uno se entregaba a frontera y te hacían todo el proceso migratorio.
Mm-hmm. So when I crossed over, we're talking 3 years ago, I came over in a city called Piedras Negras. And when you crossed the border at that time, this program didn't exist. So when you crossed, you had to go through the entire immigration process.
So were they stopped by Border Patrol, or were you guys stopped by Border Patrol when you crossed?
Entonces, ¿ustedes fueron parados, pues, por la policía fronteriza o quién los paró en la frontera?
No, yo cuando crucé el río Bravo, anteriormente había mucha migración en frontera. Uno anteriormente se entregaba a la a migración, y ellos te llevaban a un centro migratorio, te agarraban huella, tus datos, si tenías antecedentes, tatuajes. De hecho, yo duré casi 3 días para que me pudieran soltar ahí en frontera.
So, back in those times when you crossed over, I crossed over the Rio Bravo, which is the Rio Grande. Mm-hmm. You go and you would surrender yourself to immigration. So the immigration authorities, they took you to an immigration center for processing, and they did everything from take your your mugshots, take your note of your tattoos, do background checks, and do all of these things for processing. It took me about 3 days to get through the whole process when I went there.
And then just...
¿Y qué pasó después?
Ya después me soltaron, llamé a la persona que me iba a recibir, porque te han derecho una llamada, y me dirigí hasta donde estoy ahorita. Que siempre he estado aquí, desde que llegué siempre he estado aquí donde estoy ahorita.
And when you go through the processing, they release me. And then they do give you the one phone call. So I got the phone call and I had to talk to the person that was going to meet me here in the States. When I talked to the person that was going to meet me here in the States, that's when I came here to where I am now. And I've always been here. I've been here for the entire time.
Denver.
En Denver, pues.
All right. We're running up to once again. Tell them, please, we're going to take a break, commercial break. These are two men here from Venezuela. And this came to me through other people. And all the heat that you're listening to two people talk about what they did and how they did it. So hang on your hats. It's interesting. I went through the same experience with putting Palestinians on the show.
Yep.
And the same voices that are sending these text messages. Somebody's got to hear somebody, and this is the place you should be able to do it. But according to these folks, maybe not. Stay here, 710 KNUS.
Oh, wow.
And they'll tell you, nobody talks. They went to Channel 9, 7, 4, KOA. You're the man. No, they won't talk to you.
What do you think about this last segment? That was better. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. What a morning. I'm Peter Boyles. This is Radio Free Denver, good old 710 KNUS on a Saturday, March the 15th, St. Patrick's Day weekend. 49 will be the high, 62 on Sunday, and on Monday, patio weather, 70 degrees. This goes back. It took a while to put this show together. If you're just joining us, we have two men here from Venezuela, and they're at undisclosed locations on the phone. It patches through. I have a great friend who's now become even a more wonderful friend is here. And he is the interpreter for all of this. And you can imagine what's taking place off air, the words and the terms and everything that's being used. Let me say something here, what time it is. It's 10:45, about this business and what's happened to it. I take the same amount of heat for having Palestinians in studio, and it's gone on. And I can tell you this, that the people that come in and speak on behalf, if that's the right term, of the Palestinians, they've gone to Channel 9 and been turned away. They've gone to the newspapers and been turned away. They've been turned away at other so-called talk stations, and I bring them in studio. Now, whether you agree or disagree, but the discernment of listening to people speak. And it's interesting to me as got kind of the steel trap, the same people saying the same things who come after the radio show for having terrorists in now are the same people again. So, I mean, I with against the wind, but what's I think important is how this business has indeed lost its way. That these are two men, they're telling their story, and they're being attacked by, I don't know. So having said that, in studio is our interpreter. Let us then go back to the two men. We're saying 1 and 2, and I need to be clear that I was invited to come and meet them after the show, and the radio station management said, no, don't go. Everybody has plausible deniability, as in the words of Richard Nixon, and so we continue. They'll be with us again next hour. We'll find a way, if you send messages into Adam, that we will get those messages. If they're reasonable, we'll get them to the fellas. So our interpreter is with us, and the conditions that they describe, one of the main, this question came from a listener. Do they believe that this country can absorb more and more people? Is there a limit in their estimate, in their estimation?
Bueno, vamos a regresar con ustedes, los invitados. Sabe que mientras que estábamos en la pausa comercial nos llegaron algunas preguntas de unos escuchantes, y una de las preguntas que ellos nos preguntaron, ¿ustedes creen realmente que este país puede absorber o recibir a más gente? ¿Cuál es el límite?
Bueno, a mi respecto, no sabría decirle el límite de personas porque tendríamos que contabilizar todo eso. Pero realmente yo lo único que le pido al gobierno de los Estados Unidos es que nos dé la oportunidad de trabajar, nos dé la oportunidad de darnos la legalidad, de ayudarnos a tener un trabajo digno. Nosotros no pedimos que nos regalen, nosotros pedimos que nos den un documento donde yo pueda ir a un trabajo sin miedo de que la policía o el gobierno, el Estado arremeta contra mí, para que yo no tenga que buscar otras alternativas o hacer cosas la cual no quiero, como estudiante, como padre de familia, como hermano, yo quiero vivir dignamente. De aceptar más personas a los Estados Unidos ya es cuestión de que el país lo decida, o lo mismo estadounidenses. Nosotros no podemos obligar a nadie a que nos acepte, pero solo le pedimos la oportunidad de demostrar que queremos trabajar, que queremos estudiar, que queremos formar un buen hogar, que podemos ser vecinos, amigos, que no todo lo que se ha dicho de nosotros es malo. O sea, se dice todo lo malo, pero la realidad de que nosotros vivimos, lo que nosotros queremos, no se cuenta.
So, in terms of, I don't know, a limit, I really can't tell you a head count. That's really hard for something to be quantifiable. The only thing that we're asking is we're asking for the U.S. government, for the people, to give us the opportunity to work legally and to find an honest job. We are not here to look for handouts. All I want is a document, some type of document that says that I can hold a job and that nobody's going to come against me. The state is not going to come against me. The police aren't going to come and arrest me. I just want that surety so that I can work. We want to work. We do not want to resort to the alternatives, because sometimes the alternatives are a lot worse. As a student, as a dad, as a brother, we just want to live. Now, we don't know if the country can accept us. We're not obligating anyone to accept us. The people are going to vote however they're going to vote. We can't say how you're going to decide, but it is up to the country. All we want is the opportunity to work. We want the opportunity to study. We want the opportunity to build a good home. We want to be your neighbors. We want to be your friends. We want you to see that we're dads, and we don't like the way that we're being portrayed. We just don't. We want to be here. We want to live.
Are they paying taxes?
¿Ustedes están pagando impuestos?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you guys get free handouts from Joe Biden? This is the kinds of things that are coming here on the computer screen in front of me. So,
¿Ustedes están recibiendo beneficios públicos de Joe Biden? Estas son las preguntas que me están dando.
No.
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 I'll read you this one. Peter, trip him up and ask him, when did he get on the airplane to fly to America, period, from Eric J. Manning?
So, ahí le va una que es interesante. Le preguntan al señor Peter, pregúntale a estos hombres cuándo se subieron a un avión para venir a los Estados Unidos del señor Eric.
All right.
I know.
Bueno,
never mind.
Contestándole esa pregunta, mi amigo, lamentablemente, hasta que tú llegas a México tienes que caminar. Lamentablemente yo pasé por Mexicali, por todo eso tuve que caminar. Cuando yo llegué a Mexicali, a Caléxico, fue que yo pude tomar un avión desde California, San Diego, hasta Denver. De allí no puedes tomar ningún avión ni nada. Yo sé que los estadounidenses, muchas personas se preguntan, no son legales, no es legal, pero realmente, aunque ustedes no lo crean, en el margen de la ilegalidad, nosotros tratamos de hacer todo lo más legal posible. A mí nadie me costeó mi camino. Yo tuve que trabajar, tuve que vender, tuve que soltar todo lo que tenía en mi vida solo por caminar a lo que yo creo y creí, y siempre fue una ilusión del sueño americano y que un país me podía dar una oportunidad, solo una oportunidad. El único beneficio que yo le agradezco de todo corazón, y creo que hablo en muchos migrantes, es del de que me den documentación, de que me den comida, de que me den casa, y todo eso es mentiras. Yo solo necesito un empleo, que es una oportunidad para yo pagar mi agua, mi gas, mi luz, mi arriendo, para yo poder comprarme una casa si puedo, para yo pagar mi transporte, para yo poder surgir. Solo una oportunidad de ser legal y poder trabajar.
So I want to answer that question really quick. There's no plane ride. When you get to Mexico, or at least before you get to Mexico, it's all walking. All of it is walking. When I got to Mexicali and then we crossed over, that's when I was able to take a plane from California to Denver. But other than that, it was all walking. No one paid for my plane. I had to pay for my plane. I had to sell everything. I paid and I worked and I basically sold my life. And you know what? I traded it for a walk. And that walk was towards the American dream, or at least I thought. And to all the people that want to know.
I need to read them this one. All them illegals lie their asses off. Joe Biden was flying them thugs here from Venezuela to America. Ask him, did he ever get on an airplane any time? So this is the stuff that's coming in this morning. Tell him to hang on. We're going to take the top of the hour break.
Permítame, vamos a tomar un descanso rápido.
and we'll come right back. Stand by, 710 KNUS. And good morning one more time. This has really been an important first hour. Let's hope the second hour stays with us. It is Saturday, March the 15th, 2025. Good old 710 KNUS. The weather for today, 49 will be the high, and sunny and breezy tomorrow, 62. And on Monday, it will be 70 degrees, patio weather. So this goes back, and it speaks to the true traditions of talk radio. But regardless, I got out of the hospital. I got a heart valve, and it's just been that's been a great experience. And I got a call from a friend who goes back many years with me, and he said, look, I have a contact with these two men from Venezuela, and with all the heat that's being brought to Venezuelans and people in the country illegally. And I had brain gas and said, why don't we put them on the radio show? And how to do it, and you had to believe that there was, some concern here at the radio station. So what we began to do is now they're in separate locations. They sat next to each other, and we got a lot of blowback through the phones, and then they moved into separate parts of where they were staying. And then we began a quest for an interpreter. And I got some great friends that can do rapid interpretations. And they were all pent up and busy and couldn't do it. Then we had an interesting injection that got pulled back quickly, and I think I may understand why. So finally coming to the rescue. And as I say, someday when the book is written, I always say that this young man is tremendous, and he has been helpful as well. Now, I want to make a statement about something, and then we'll go in and ask them about voting, because that seems to be so important to so many people, I guess, that believe that Donald Trump had the election stolen. Look, what the purpose of this, I see how this business works, is not what it's turned into. And seeing Joe Pags get swatted is so frightening. It should be to people in this business. But after I got sideways with Mr. Trump's John Eastman, I learned that a lot of that hadn't gone away, and I hearkened people back to the Berg story. Look, the purpose of the First Amendment and the purpose of what this radio business is about, and those of you who have listened now that we only have the Saturday show, I've had the Palestinians in the studio 4 times. And it's called, the plight of the Palestinian. And it was lessons learned. I mean, they were terrorists, they were pimps, they were whatever they were. And so we're hearing it again today, and it is what it is, and it comes, I think, from the same places. So my interpreter is here. And our interpreter, who's really it's his show at this point, so we could bring 1 and 2 back up. And one of the things that's been accusatory, the first call from some strange adventure, but now throughout the morning, throughout the time the fellows have been here, did they vote? How many times did they vote? Did they get ballots? Were they taken to the polls by Democrats? All of those questions. I don't know if how to even pose the question, but if you would, please.
So, una de las cosas que nos han llegado mientras que ustedes estaban antes de venir al aire es de que hemos recibido muchas acusaciones de que según ustedes han sido transportados aquí por los demócratas y que les dan documentos para hacer la votación en los Estados Unidos, y todavía no sabemos cómo preguntarles a ustedes esa pregunta, pero ¿eso es cierto? ¿Ustedes han votado en una elección de Estados Unidos?
No, eso es totalmente falso.
No, that's totally false.
Not according to these people, so.
No según a esta gente, ¿eh?
I wanted to just make sure we could somewhat clean the air.
Y solo nada más me quería asegurar para sacar la verdad.
No, ¿y cómo, cómo votarían una persona aquí que no tan legalizada, no tienen residencia? O sea, no lo veo correcto, porque yo fui una persona militar en mi país y me retiré por la corrupción que hay en mi país. De hecho, yo estuve presente cuando Chávez se lanzó a la presidencia con Capris, y yo estoy consciente Y todo lo que estábamos en mi barco, en la fragata General Surleve 24, sabemos que esa presidencia se la ganó Caprile.
No, and honestly, I just don't know how people can ask that. How could you do that kind of thing when you're here? You're not legal, you're not a resident, you don't have a
Doesn't
job,
matter.
you can't vote. And here's the thing, I was military, so I retired because of the corruption. And I was present, and we all knew that during one of those campaigns that Capella won. All of us were conscious about it. All of us, the ones that were on my ship, I can't say the whole name, number 24, but how could we go and do that somewhere else if we saw what happened to our own country when
Doesn't
it was
matter.
stolen?
I just want to get the question out. Many people that migrated to other countries, it was called the Bolivian Revolution. And there was an economic crisis experienced in Venezuela that was worse than even what happened inside the Soviet Union. And Chavez imposed all these currency controls. And I spent my week reading and price controls and government policies that caused shortages in Venezuela. As a result, if you could speak to the shortages, what it was like in Venezuela, where the Venezuelan population, what was it like in Venezuela when they left?
Bueno, queremos hablar también acerca de algo que está parecido a la revolución boliviana, donde sabemos que Venezuela ha sufrido una crisis con su dinero. Sabemos que Chávez había establecido muchos controles de los precios, y las normas que ellos estaban haciendo ha arruinado lo que viene siendo los bienes en Venezuela. Sabemos que hay mucha escasez. ¿Ustedes pueden hablar un poco acerca de esa situación ahorita?
Bueno, claro. Aclarar las cosas a la persona. En Venezuela, si el gobierno diga lo que diga, o se mande por televisión y él quiera mostrar algo que no es, en Venezuela no hay agua, no hay luz, no hay gas, no hay mucha comida. La comida que ingieren los venezolanos no tiene un proceso adecuado, no tiene una calidad buena. A veces las personas duran un mes comiendo harina de maíz pilado. Es algo que, aunque ustedes no lo crean, dañan a muchos niños, dañan a muchas personas. Y esto lo digo con realidad, lo viví yo. El gobierno se aprovecha y amenaza a la persona con grupos llamados colectivos, obliga a los militares a matar a las personas que no toman lo que ellos le llaman el bono, la bolsa. O sea, todo lo que llamen tema revolución para nosotros se ha convertido en una muerte. Cuando tú hablas de la palabra revolución, hablamos de personas mediocres que toman el gobierno a la fuerza y que no saben hacer las cosas.
So I want to clarify that in Venezuela, you cannot believe anything that comes out of the government's mouth. The reality is we have no water, we have no electricity, we have no gas, and the food there is terrible. The quality's terrible. Basically, what they do is that they give you something that we call a bag, and the bag is things that are, it's kind of like a care package that are in there. The only thing that's really in there is a variation of corn flour, and that's what people live off of for an entire month. And that is the reality. People get sick, kids get sick, everyone suffers from malnutrition down there. And here's the thing, the government does threaten you. They threaten you with things that they call collectives. They say, if you don't do this or that, then they'll send the military out and they can end you. They can kill you there. And what they call revolutionaries and all of these things, the reality is it's just a bunch of mediocre people that are trying to force you to take what they want you to take.
From the wall again, please, Peter, please ask these men what, and by the way, you can send a text in and we will read, if it's reasonable. Peter, please ask these men what they like most about America. Also, what was the hardest adjustment? That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Bueno, y le queremos leer rápidamente entonces de los mensajes que nos están llegando, pero nos han dicho, pregúntele a estos hombres qué es lo que les gusta de los Estados Unidos y cuál fue la parte más difícil para poder asimilarse o para ajustarse.
Para mí, no me puedo quejar. No me puedo quejar porque he ayudado mucho a mi familia. Con poco lo que hago, gano. He podido sustentar a mi familia, que no están de acuerdo con todo lo que hace el gobierno en mi país. Yo le doy las gracias a Dios por haberme puesto donde estoy ahorita. También le doy las gracias a las personas con quien estoy, que son unas personas muy maravillosas, son personas en las que se pueden confiar. Le doy muchas gracias a Dios por ponerme la familia con la que estoy ahorita, que se han convertido muy especiales en mi vida.
You know, honestly, I can't complain. I mean, with the very little that I earn here, I'm able to support my family, and that's enough for me. And I want to say this, I just really want to thank God, because I do believe God is the reason why I'm here now. And I want to thank, this is very special to me, I want to thank all the people that have helped me, the people that I'm with right now. They're marvelous. It's gotten to the point where they trust us a lot, and I trust them. And I thank God for that. I thank God for my family. But there is really nothing that I can complain about, and I shouldn't.
Peter, Peter, ask your illegal aliens what sort of government benefits they get.
Dicen, Peter, pregúntale a tus, como si fueran míos, pero ahora dicen, pregúntale a tus inmigrantes ilegales qué tipos de beneficios reciben del gobierno.
Hasta el momento yo no he recibido nada del gobierno, o sea, nada. Y no somos personas ilegales. Yo estoy en un proceso migratorio. Yo cuando me entregué a frontera, desde que me entregué a frontera, comencé un proceso migratorio, pues metí mi asilo antes del año. Tengo, mi permiso de trabajo. O sea, estoy haciendo las cosas bien, porque no me gustan las cosas mal hechas, porque si me gustaran las cosas mal hechas me fuera quedado en mi país. Fue una de las razones por qué me retiré de la Marina, porque no me gustan las cosas mal hechas. Y no creo que sea una persona ilegal porque ilegal porque entramos por frontera, pero yo no me considero una persona ilegal porque estoy en proceso migratorio.
So, at the moment, I have received nothing. And, you know, people are saying that we're illegal. I don't think we're illegal because we're going through a legal process. When I crossed the border, we crossed the border and we went through a process. I'm going through the process right now. I did ask for asylum and I was able to get some type of a work permit. But here's the thing that people have to understand. If I wanted to do the wrong thing, I would have just stayed in my country, and that's not what I wanted to do. I retired from the military because I did not like that the things that were going on were being done the wrong way. So people say we're illegal because we crossed the border. Okay, but I'm going through a legal process right now, and I don't think that would qualify me as illegal.
Peter, it's a proven fact that's known by everybody, evidently except you, that illegal aliens are getting ballots and they are voting. Followed up, Peter, you're obviously trying to get people to sympathize with criminal illegal aliens. It's not going to work. Here's an idea. You, meaning me, have a lot of money. Bring them to your house, otherwise STFU, which I know what that means. Once again, I go back to what I said at the opening of the hour, but nevertheless, everybody knows that these guys have voted, and I'm trying to make them sympathetic. And once again, this is mindset stuff. Why did they choose Denver of places to go?
Bueno, hemos leído uno de los comentarios que nos están llegando, pero la pregunta para ustedes es, ¿por qué decidieron en venir a Denver? ¿Por qué Denver?
Bueno, realmente se ha escuchado que hay ciudades santuario, hay ciudades donde hay mejor empleo, hay ciudades donde son más gentiles. Se han dicho muchas cosas, pero la realidad de Denver es que ofrece muchas oportunidades por el tipo de calidad de personas. Realmente lo bello y maravilloso de este estado, que a mí me ha encantado, es porque las personas son muy acogedoras, las personas son muy decentes, las personas te pueden ayudar, no van a arremeter contra tu personalidad, ni contra tu color de piel o porque migraste, no, al contrario, ellos te van a preguntar por qué migraste y en qué te puedo ayudar.
So you've heard a lot about sanctuary cities, but we also hear things about like better jobs. And the reason why I chose Denver is because the people here are a very gentle kind of people.
Well, it's a sanctuary city.
When you come to Denver, there's a lot of opportunity, but we came because of the quality of the people. When you talk to somebody on the street, they understand you. They're not, out of line, disrespectful. They care about your personality and not about your skin color. Instead of coming up and being mean and trying to oppose you, they ask you, like, where are you coming from and how can we help? That's why.
This is ask them about what's the name of the Venezuelan gang, TREN. Will you say it?
Yep, Tren de Aragua.
Okay. Can you please ask them about whether they have any interactions or threats from that gang you just mentioned? Thank you.
Me quieren hacerle preguntar a ustedes si ustedes tienen alguna experiencia con la pandilla Tren de Aragua. ¿Ustedes han recibido amenazas? ¿Pueden hablar un poco de eso?
Bueno, sí. Yo le voy a decir la realidad. El Tren de Aragua es una organización delincuente que es organizada por el gobierno de Venezuela. Realmente los reales cabecillas del Tren de Aragua son el gobierno de Venezuela. Para nadie es un secreto y aunque lo quieran desmentir, yo como venezolano lo puedo afirmar. El principal cabecilla se llama Diosdado Cabello, Iri Valera, Maduro y así sucesivamente. Los nombres que se han escuchado por televisión, ¿no? Que el gobierno de Venezuela quiere tapar el sol con un dedo, quiere involucrar personas inocentes y obligan a otras personas, pero en realidad esa es la verdad. El hecho es que las personas que le están pagando a los delincuentes para salir de Venezuela y están saliendo de la cárcel libremente es el propio gobierno de Venezuela. El gobierno de Venezuela, el señor Maduro, el tirano de Maduro, ha robado a nuestro país, ha usurpado nuestra presidencia y ahora hace que los mismos delincuentes sean personas más agradables que los propios venezolanos. Él a nosotros, a los estudiantes, a los profesores, a los doctores, nos ha hecho migrar. El Tren de Aragua que está aquí en Estados Unidos, yo le pido a todos los americanos, no solo al gobierno de Estados Unidos, yo le pido al verdadero pueblo americano que si encuentran a alguien del Tren Aragua, que si encuentran a alguien que esté haciendo lo malo, que tomen las leyes de este país, porque nosotros migramos a este país, porque creemos fielmente en sus leyes. Si hay uno del Tren de Aragua, no lo deporten a Venezuela, porque el gobierno de Venezuela a los 3 días lo soltará y un estudiante morirá por cada delincuente que ustedes agarren del gobierno, mueren 10 estudiantes. O sea, ¿de qué me sirve a mí llevarlo a Venezuela?
We have our break music. Tell them to pause.
Pausa. Vamos a tomar un descanso rápido.
And we'll take care of everything on the other side. The break is here on Peter Boyles, 710 KNUS, Saturday morning. You're listening to two men here from Venezuela, and we will continue. I have a wonderful friend sitting behind the glass. I'm going to see if I can get him in here this morning as well. Great music, man. Hey, maybe pick an Irish tune before we get out of here, all right? St. Patrick's Day weekend, the parade's underway. But this one, change your mind. Leaving Me Behind. Stone tune, boy. Bring it to me. Saturday morning, 7:10, KNUS, Denver's talk station. It's March the 15th. 49 will be the high today. Mountain snow tomorrow, 62. Could be motorcycle weather. And on Monday, certainly motorcycle weather, be 70 patio weather. Great guests, an interpreter in studio, and a lot of vitriol. David Ellis and David Ellis Cherry Creek. You heard me talking about David for so many years. David Ellis Jewelers, to get a fortune in cash and secure an appraisal from David for all the valuables you have tucked away in your home. And it's true. But let me share the reasons to see David with holidays coming up in June, brides coming up, and everything that takes, graduations. Just in case you don't got a Rolex watch or a rare coins or a silver tea set, go see David and he's there right now for all your meaningful gift-giving occasions. David Ellis Jewelers, just the right items for just the right price, all the special people that mean the most to you. Antique watches, emerald pendants, gold necklaces, diamond rings. Trusted Jeweler has been buying precious metals and antiques in Colorado for decades. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces that your loved ones will treasure. And again, visit David Ellis, see for yourself. Look for the black awning on the corner, 3rd and, it's easy one, 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. He's there as we speak, 6 days a week. Explore davidellisjewelry.com. Call my friend David, 303-322-8779. 303-322-8779, and tell David that Peter Boyles sent you. Now, my interpreter is here, and right prior, and bring the fellows up, right prior to our break, the gang question was asked, and they gave you you were telling me off air the answer that you got. If you would retort to what was said.
The question was related to the Tren de Aragua, and the answer was Tren de Aragua, TDA, as we know it here in America, is a criminal organization, but it is sponsored by the Venezuelan government. The TDA, it is no secret, has heads of state as their backing. Diosdado Cabello and President Maduro are some of the ones that take control and operate the entire organization. It is just like the Venezuelan government that they try to cover the sun with their thumb. But here's what they do. They pay delinquents inside of prisons, and they send them to the United States because they want to tyrannize the people that had come over. They want to squash any threats to their presidency. And the reality is when they go back to Venezuela, or if they're deported, they're immediately welcomed because they already know their own. They're all one and the same. They'll probably be in jail for a couple of days, maybe 3 days, and then they're released. And the reality also is that when they get out of jail, once they're deported in Venezuela, they will start killing people. They'll start killing students. For every one you release, 10 people die.
Well, the history of ethnic gangs in America, whether it's the Irish, the Italians, the Sicilians, the Jews, it goes back, and now the Russians, and there are Puerto Rican gangs, and there are Jamaican gangs, and the posses from Jamaica. So that history is just one more level of ethnic gangs. And of course, back even before the Great American Depression, there were gangs in this country. So that part of it, but now it's singled out. The next part of that is, do they find themselves connected or tied to that gang just simply because they're Venezuelans?
Ahora la siguiente pregunta para ustedes es de que ustedes se sienten relacionados con esa pandilla simplemente porque ustedes son venezolanos.
Lamentablemente así no hizo conocer el gobierno de Venezuela y así las personas lo creen. Mi respuesta es a los estadounidenses que tienen miedo de que si yo contrato a un venezolano para que me corte el jardín, el césped del jardín, puede ser del Tren Aragua. Lamentablemente así hoy en día nos tacha el mundo. Por uno pagamos todos, decimos en mi país, pero la realidad es otra. Yo lamentablemente no pude terminar la universidad en mi país por eso, porque la delincuencia es preferida por el gobierno cuando el estudiante es arremetido. Entonces hoy en día en los Estados Unidos nos encontramos con que un estudiante venezolano es un delincuente. O sea, así no ve la sociedad.
So, unfortunately, the Venezuelan government has made it a point to associate all of us under that blanket of Tren de Aragua. We believe and we think Americans will group us all into that, and they honestly think that if you hire someone from Venezuela to cut your grass, for example, that they're already related to TDA. And that's the hard part about this, is that our government grouped us into this, and the American government grouped us into this, but the reality is different. Unfortunately, crime is very high in our country. Students are punished. This is the reason I couldn't finish school, is because the government prefers criminals over students.
Why have they not learned English as long as they've been here?
¿Por qué no han aprendido inglés durante todo este tiempo que han estado aquí?
Oh, no problem. Yo I study English. I understand English.
Sounds like he's trying, or
Parece que lo está tratando, por lo menos.
Yes, yo quiero aprender inglés.
Yes, I want to learn
Okay.
English.
The next series is, and this is, I'll read it to you. Were there guns? Let me read this so I can get it. Do everyday citizens in Venezuela have guns? Did the government confiscate guns? It's a question that came in.
Una pregunta que tenemos para ustedes que nos llegó. ¿La ciudadanía venezolana en su país, ellos tienen el derecho de tener armas o el gobierno los ha desarmado?
En Venezuela ningún civil puede tener armamento. Solo los policías, los militares y el gobierno. Para usted portar un armamento no existe el porte de arma en mi país. Realmente lo único que tienen armamento son los entes del gobierno. Por eso a nosotros nos cuesta mucho tumbar al tirano de Maduro. Con piedras y palos contra un fusil es difícil, amigo.
Unfortunately, we're not allowed, the citizenry is not allowed to have guns.
No.
So the only people that can have it is armed forces, military, police, or any a government worker. That right was taken away from us. This is the problem. We cannot overthrow the tyrant Maduro because we're bringing rocks, sticks and stones up against the tanks and rifles.
Age old again. Age old again. Tenement Square, where you pick a place, I'll show you one. And do you guys ever consider or look into legal immigration? Do you consider immigrating to another country?
¿Ustedes alguna vez han considerado inmigrar legalmente o alguna vez han pensado en inmigrar a otro país?
No, yo migré acá, gracias a Dios tengo una oportunidad acá y voy a demostrar lo contrario de lo que se dice de todos los venezolanos. Yo voy a demostrar que soy una persona que estudia, que trabaja, que quiere aprender y que quiere superarse. Y emigrar a otro país, lamentablemente, ¿para qué? Si lo que pasa en el mundo es que las personas no se están dando cuenta que siguen el mismo ejemplo de Venezuela. En muchos países, y no quiero nombrarlo por no entrar en cuestiones políticas, pero en muchos países lamentablemente están haciendo lo mismo que en Venezuela. Están arremetiendo contra los estudiantes, contra los trabajadores, contra las personas buenas, y a los malos se les está dando beneficio. Al único que se le está dando beneficio es a los violadores, a los secuestradores, a los asesinos, a los ladrones, y esas personas son las que deberían de tener beneficio, pero en una cárcel de Guantánamo, o como en el ejemplo del presidente de El Salvador en el SECO.
So, I have never considered immigrating anywhere else because this is where the opportunities are. And I want to show you and everyone that's listening myself coming from Venezuela, I want to work hard. I want to get better. I want to learn. I want to study. I want to show you and prove you wrong that I am good. And why would I go anywhere else? Here's the reality. And I can't say much about this, but Venezuela is a perfect example of this. The problem is that the Venezuelan government prefers criminals, rapists, abusers, people that kidnap people over students and over workers. To be quite honest with you, those rapists and those killers and all of them belong in somewhere like Guantanamo. Or honestly, if they were in El Salvador, they belong in the Sicol.
This is an interesting question too. This came in. Are there any people listening that Spanish is their native language? Do I got that? Is there anybody listening to the radio show this morning that Spanish is their native language? You can try and get a hold of us or just come in on the one line that's open, 303-696-1971. All right, back to the questions that are here. And again, I'm Peter Boyles, and I have with us just a spectacular interpreter. These are two men from Venezuela. So much is talked about illegals from Venezuela, and they've done the show, taken the calls, or at least taken the questions to the wall. Who helped them resettle in Denver and get work? If they pay taxes, how did they get a valid Social Security card? How can ICE do background checks on them? And somebody has sent an earlier text and asking me, look out the window and see if ICE is in the parking lot. So there's that question. So if you would, please.
Para todos los radioescuchantes que nos están escuchando ahorita, si ustedes solo hablan español, nosotros queremos escuchar de ustedes, márquenos o mándenos un mensaje de texto. El número de teléfono es el 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. Mi pregunta para ustedes, los invitados, es de que ¿quién les ayudó a ustedes a poder tomar raíces aquí en la ciudad de Denver? Ustedes, ¿cómo pagan impuestos? ¿Cómo pudieron recibir un número de seguro social? También nos han llegado comentarios que el ICE nos está esperando afuera de la estación.
Bueno, gracias a la oportunidad de los Estados Unidos, cuando pisé territorio americano, pude empezar a tener un permiso de trabajo, un Social Security, y eso fue lo primero que yo aprendí. Desde mi país, mi madre siempre me inculcó lo legal. Y yo pago arriendo, yo pago luz, yo pago agua, pago taxa, pago mi transporte, pago mi comida, pago todo lo que yo gasto y todo lo que yo genero es legal, es estipulado por la ley, y el Social Security y el permiso de trabajo me lo dio el gobierno del presidente Jon Biden con sus leyes y sus aplicaciones. Yo le digo a los americanos, si tú me ayudas a yo poder trabajar, a yo ser legal, yo creo que habría menos delincuentes en la calle. Pero si tú arremetes contra mí, que yo estoy buscando de trabajar, ¿no crees que estás ayudando a que la delincuencia incremente?
So the moment that I set foot on American soil, I was able to go the legal route, and I did receive a work permit. I received Social Security. When I got to this country, I did all of that legally through the prior administration, which is through Joe Biden administration. And people need to understand that when I was little, I was raised to follow the law. While I'm here, I pay everything. I pay utilities, electricity, phone, gas, cell phone, my transportation, food, all of my expenses. I pay for them legally. I earn my wages legally. I pay taxes legally. And this is a question to all the Americans that are listening to us. All we want to do is work. If we cannot work, then some people have to resort to crime. What do you think is better? Do you think it's better for us to have jobs, or do you think it's better for us to be criminals?
It's interesting in prepping for the show to see Venezuelan immigration. And just give you an example, Venezuelan immigration to Chile increased by 1,388% since 2016. Venezuelans migrated to Chile, a stable economy, a non-corrupt. According to Chilean Department of Foreigners and Immigration, the number of Chilean visas for Venezuelans increased from 758 in 2011 to 8,381 in 2016, and it is only 90% were work visas for Venezuelans, men aged 20 to 35. Sounds pretty much like what we're witnessing here, does it not, interpreter? The international travel, I said, after they arrive, attempting to start new lives. But boy, it isn't just the United States, but it seems to be seeking stability. Is that fair? We have a break coming, so let me do that one more time. If you have a question, you can text it to us on Denver's Talk Leader. Once again, the Dan Caplis text line, 720-819-5115. Return right after this. Morning, everybody. Saturday, the 15th of March, 2025, 710 KNUS Denver's talk station. It's also St. Patrick's Day weekend, and there's a sort of a sidebar that fits into this. 49 and mountain snow, 62 and sun tomorrow, and 70 on Monday. The historians that view our country and our country's past, one of the theories of St. Patrick's Day parade was in New York City, is it was perhaps the first civil rights demonstration in America, given the fact that, you know, members of Irish and dogs need not apply and all the anti-Catholicism. I mean, it doesn't match up to what African Americans and Latinos went through. I'm not suggesting that, but they paraded in New York City. And there are historians that believe that the St. Patrick's Day parade was initially the first civil rights demonstration in our country. We have limited time left. Our interpreter is here. The questions are here. Let me go to this one first. Let's see. There we go. Are they able to talk with their families back in Venezuela by cell phones, says FaceTime or Zoom on a daily basis?
Pregunta para ustedes, los invitados. ¿Ustedes tienen la capacidad para hablar con sus familias en Venezuela por teléfono o los puede ver a través de una llamada telefónica de video? ¿Tienen esa oportunidad?
Sí, nosotros tenemos una plataforma mayormente que se llama en Venezuela WhatsApp, aquí también creo. Yo tengo casi 3 años viendo a mi hijo por medio de una pantalla, igual que a mi mamá. Parte de mi familia, mi familia es muy grande y por medio de allí es que podemos ver a nuestra madre, nuestro hijo, nuestros familiares.
So yes, there's a very popular app that we use. It's called WhatsApp, and I think they also use it here in the state.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, for the last 3 years, I've been able to see my mom and I've been able to see my children grow, but only through a screen.
Wow.
And I have a big family, so we have had the opportunity to see them, but only through a little screen.
Of everything that's come into this radio station in the last 2 hours, let me read this. Thank you. This is aimed at the fellas, the men. Thank you for coming to America and bringing down the cost of labor. Everyone who is complaining would also complain if the cost of a new roof doubled. Every time they went out to eat, the menu prices were 50% higher. Our economy cannot survive without a steady supply of relative cheap labor. Would you tell them that, please?
Algo que les queríamos leer, que nos llegó aquí a los estudios. Alguien le estaba diciendo, dile a los hombres muchísimas gracias por venir a los Estados Unidos y contribuir para que nosotros tengamos un costo bajo de labor. Sabemos que mucha gente se quejaría inmediatamente si el precio de poder arreglar su techo o si el precio de la comida del menú sube. Ellos se quejarían también de eso. Y le damos muchas gracias que ustedes están contribuyendo para ayudar que nuestro costo de valor esté bajo.
Lo bueno que tenemos la mayoría de los venezolanos, de 98, 97%, es que no nos importa las horas que nosotros trabajemos. Contar y nuestros familiares estén bien, yo por lo menos soy un tipo de persona de que no le comento a mi familia, o sea, si tengo poco, prefiero dárselo y poder estar, o sea, me quedo, han abierto momentos que yo me quedo sin dinero por dárselo a mi familia, porque ellos coman bien, vistan bien, saquen al bebé a pasear, salga a mi familia a pasear. Pero no soy un tipo de persona de decirle a mi familia, toma, esto es lo que tengo, te lo voy a enviar. No, yo se lo envío y ya, no, así yo esté aquí preocupado, qué voy a hacer mañana, qué va a pasar mañana, qué voy a comer mañana, no.
Yeah, and I want to say something that's really good about the Venezuelan people is that 98 or 97% of them just put in all the hours. It doesn't matter the hours that they're working, as long as their families are doing well. We send money back to the country. Sometimes I've sent money back and I was left with nothing, but I have the satisfaction that my family is able to eat, that they're able to pay for things, that they're able to go out. The only thing that I send them is the money. I don't send them the worries. I don't tell them about what I'm going to do tomorrow or how I'm going to eat tomorrow. I send it, and I have the hopes that I can work for the rest.
This is one aimed at me, and I want to respond to it with the men here. I hope you consider having a show about how many illegals have damaged, impacted regular citizens, giving equal time to the texter. That's every day of the week. That's 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week on talk radio. This is the same moment I find myself in with the Palestinians, that the Palestinians that we deal with have knocked on the door in Channel 9, knocked on the door in different newspapers, get no attention, they get turned away, their calls don't get answered. Now, I'm not taking a side here, but I want this texter to understand 7 days a week on talk radio in America today, you never hear this. And I'm not saying one way is right or one way is wrong, but don't come and say equal time. And that's out the window. These guys are here. And again, oftentimes I get baffled, but having said that, do they regret coming? Do they regret coming?
Una pregunta para ustedes. ¿Ustedes han tenido algún remordimiento en venir aquí?
Vértale, creo que todo, porque no es fácil dejar a tu hijo con tus padres, no poder estar con él el día de su cumpleaños, no poder compartir con él, no poder darle todo ese cariño que tu padre, tu mamá te dio cuando pequeño, que ellos solamente lo ven por medio de una pantalla, y ven el esfuerzo que uno hace a diario para que ellos estén bien y puedan seguir adelante. Yo no pierdo las esperanzas de poder tener a mi familia aquí, por lo menos a mi mamá y a mi hijo.
Kinda. See, the thing is, it's not easy to not see your children, and being with them, missing out on their birthdays, missing out on showing them that the love that your parents gave you, it definitely is a struggle. It's a struggle that your children don't see, but you do it so that they can be well off, so that they can be good. And I still have hopes. I haven't lost hope to hopefully one day have my mom here or have them here.
A text that just came in that said, glad you are doing this. Well, that makes it feel whatever it's worth. This last one says, also, I've noticed a lot of the new arrivals demand about 25%. There we go again. Tell them thank you very much for the 2 hours. And I know I'm invited to go and meet them, but the management has said I should stay away because no one knows what kind of a fallout will happen. So, I work for wages, so we have to do that. But thank them. And for taking time out to do this. And I know there was some risk involved, so thank them.
Bueno, a ustedes les queremos dar las gracias por tomar su tiempo para estar aquí con nosotros. Y lo siento mucho, yo sé que hemos recibido la invitación para ir y conocerlos a ustedes. Desafortunadamente, los gerentes que están trabajando aquí no nos dejaron tomar permiso para hacer eso. Y como todavía tenemos que trabajar, no podemos conocerlos a ustedes, pero les queríamos agradecer en venir aquí y compartir con nosotros durante estas últimas 2 horas.
Gracias.
Bueno, antes de despedirnos, yo le quiero dar muchas gracias al programa, al traductor, a todas esas personas que nos están oyendo, están mandando su mensaje, a todo el que quiera hacer una pregunta. Bueno, yo estoy agradecido y estoy dispuesto a responderle. Cada vez que me quieran preguntar algo, decirle, yo le rediré la verdad. Le pido la oportunidad, en realidad, que comprendan más que todo en estos momentos nuestra situación, ya que en mi persona yo tengo refugiado a mi familia en otro país, por la cual mi gobierno ha remetido contra mi familia, no ha quitado todo. Hoy en día no tenemos derecho a la vida.
30 segundos. Can I say this when we come back on the air?
Sure. No, I'll bring you back, but their 2 hours are up, and you'll thank them, and I'm drop them off. We'll come back. We'll figure this all out. I have some other folks here with us as well. I'm Peter Boyles. This is really Radio Free Denver this morning, 710 KNUS. Now I say good afternoon. It's past 12 o'clock. I'm Peter Boyles. What a morning it's been. It is March 15th, 2025, St. Patrick's Day Parade weekend. Good old 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. The weather goes like this, and it's beauty. 49 today, mountain snow tomorrow. Get motorcycles out. Warmer and breezy, 62. But look at Monday, patio weather, 70 degrees. If you missed those last 2 hours, and I'm going to turn on the microphone for our interpreter who just made the show happen. We had two men, Venezuelans, and everybody's talking about who's in the country and the deal. And again, it was perhaps the principle, or one of the principles in Donald Trump's reelection, and there's a couple of different things that went with it. But those two guys, and I was asked if I wanted to meet them, and I have to be in total honesty. The radio station management said they didn't believe I should be doing that, so I will not. Now, you've stayed out of all of this. You're still with us. There are some things you wanted to say, so we've asked you to stay with us. So go ahead. Mike's yours. What would you like to say?
The last message that they gave before they got off air is the following. Before I say goodbye, and while I say goodbye, I want to thank everyone for their messages and all of their questions. There is no question that I will not answer with the truth. I want everyone to understand that the situation that we are in is dire. I am a refugee, and my family lives in another country, and we are trying to flee a tyrannical government that we cannot overthrow. I want people to understand that, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
What did you think? Now, you've never met them, and you came in here this morning, and once again, when the book's written, but you talked to them before the show started and how you were going to do it. What was your sense of them?
So, in my personal opinion, I think they were very sincere. Being in the community, you understand what a lot of people go through, and who can't relate to that, right? To where if my family was sick or if my family was in need and I had to make the decision to go through a jungle and risk our lives just so that they can have something to eat or medicine to have, I don't think anyone reasonable would not do that.
I've often said, if I had a sick child and there was help in Montana,
you'd go to Montana in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, and there's so many people on I'll call it both sides of the aisle, and I just wish people would come together and figure this out, because it's a problem that doesn't have just one solution. It's got to be multifaceted. It's so complex.
And the more I read about Venezuela, the horror of Venezuela, that was once an incredible, oil productive. It was a member of OPEC, in fact, and what was done, and people fled, and people have fled other parts of the world. The people who came from Cuba, the people who get on a list of places where people fled from. Certainly all the Eastern Bloc. Certainly, when Germany was cut in half and actually cut in thirds, people who fled Soviet Union, people who fled Mao's PRC. It's a repetitive story, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And I think one of my favorite comments is people say that Berlin, or the east side of Berlin, failed, and that's when when communism fell, then the wall fell. And someone said, well, actually, communism failed when they had to put the wall up, right?
No, absolutely.
Trying to keep people in, and I think that's really important.
And if you see, there's places that you can see where it's exactly that way. The wall's there not to keep people out, but to keep people in. Yeah. I don't know what I could ever do for you. Say hi to your boss for me, and maybe someday we'll do that together. You take care of yourself.
Thanks.
Thanks, brother. Thanks a lot. All right, we'll take calls, and I have someone here in studio, a very special friend, and see if I can find a way to get him in here as well. We'll start with Stephen. Our lines are jammed. Stephen, thank you for calling the radio show, and good morning, and thanks. Afternoon, and thanks.
Peter.
Yeah.
Hello, Peter. Just wanted to say, both even though I may not agree, your coverage of the Palestinians and your coverage today, that's what journalism is.
Well, of
you know,
course.
bringing difficult, controversial stories. So
Of course, yes.
I want to commend you on that. And then, you know, I'm from the other side of the aisle. My view is the right has just completely overblown this immigration issue. We need that kind of work. Many people are fleeing from some sort of repressive situation. Yes, there's immigrant crime. There's also homegrown crime. And if you look at Reagan and you look at some of the other leaders in the past, we did not have this sort of dark, gloomy obsession. And from an economic standpoint, these people, you know, unfortunately, a lot of these people are work below the minimum wage. I mean, they're just scrapping. And how are they harming this country economically? And I know it gets into the services, you know, Social Security, health care, blah, blah, blah. But I just think it's become an obsession, just like the stolen election. And if you just beat the drum enough, it becomes a bigger problem. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a country of immigrants, and enough said. As I mentioned in the last hour, the first St. Patrick's Day parade is believed to have been the first civil rights demonstration in America. They weren't marching because they were proud of being Irish. They were marching because they were showing the Anglo-Saxons of New York, hey, we're here, and we work here, and we are who we are. And that was the purpose, my understanding, of that first parade. And now today it's Green Halloween downtown, but it isn't what it was. And by the way, in Ireland, according to my grandma, it was a holy day. It wasn't a day of everybody thrown up in the gutter. But
that makes sense.
Well, yeah, well, sure. God knows I threw up in enough gutters. But I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know. And when I took this idea for a show to the boss, and they green-lit it, I knew it was going to turn into what it turned into, but the same thing is much true with the Palestinians. I don't know if and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying we're doing what we're supposed to do. I don't know of another show, and maybe it exists or existed, where they put, in essence, illegals on the air and took calls. I mean, we put Palestinians in the studio on air and take calls. That's what this business is supposed to be. It's not
exactly.
It's not what it's.
Whether it's paper, whether it's newspapers,
absolutely.
Whether it's journalism, TV, radio, that's what you have to go on the other side of the aisle. Well, and you have to get the hard stories. And good for your station for supporting you in both of those. I know there was a wrinkle today, but that's what you need to do. That's
I'm cool with it. I'm really cool with it. I'm an old guy. What are you going to do to me? Thank you for the kind call. You be
Bye-bye.
safe. Thanks, man. You too. We go to Don. Don, you're on the radio show. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Well, you lit them up today. Well, interesting.
You ain't heard nothing yet. You ought to read some of them that I can't read.
Well, I'll give Adam my digits. You can just forward them. It'd be enjoyable. I'll burn them. I'll put them in my burn bag afterwards.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple things real quick. First of all, this is a country of colonization, not immigrants. That happened later. Other thing, the guy had a question about how are you supported? How much money do you get? He came out and said they didn't get anything. Then a little later he says once he got here and crossed over illegally and he started going in the system, he got Social Security. Which do I believe?
I don't know. I didn't pick that part of it up, but that's a good...
I picked it up because it's very, very important to me when people ask these questions. Third thing, why are we having people work for under minimum wage, and why are these employers, and I know some, that tell me, man, if it wasn't for illegals, I wouldn't have a business, and they're making big fat money.
Oh, sure.
Especially landscapers. You know, there's so many places we need to go after.
Remember...
And just treating these people as slaves by paying them less money is despicable. That's as bad as Barbara Boxer. Who's going to clean our bathrooms?
Yeah, well, remember, and it's been a while since I've done the checking, but one of the many organizations that are Open Borders Advocates is the National Chamber of Commerce, which is a Republican front.
Of course.
So,
how about La Raza? Remember how they didn't want anybody to assimilate to English, so they could pay substandard wages, and a lot of big fat cats continue to get their big checks.
The better example of the hypocrisy is Hugo Chavez is, this once, but in this country, there was a farm workers union, and it was run by a guy by the name of Cesar Chavez. And I met Chavez's brother. Chavez carried a pocket full of dimes. His brother told me. And there was no cell phones. When he saw, and it's the old traditional scab union, when he saw non-union workers, and they were principally illegals, in the fields working, he ran to the phones, to the cell phones, and he would call. I think they weren't called ICE then. It'll come to me. But he would turn in the people principally from Mexico who were working in the fields trying to replace the farm workers. And so when Ronald Reagan...
They lowered the wages.
Of course. And it's the same thing in the mills or the mines or the factories. And I think and I'm a big Reagan fan, but I think Reagan made a mistake. And the big growers in California were Bud Antel, Iceberg, and they were big Republican contributors, and they backed Reagan on him breaking the union. And the union, to me, I'm a union guy, but so when I see it's got that red eagle on that black field, and they're marching with Chavez's flag for the rights, and I'm thinking to myself, do you even understand who he was? And his brother got arrested because he hit a guy with half a pool cue at the border. I mean, they were who they were, and they were like talking to the old union guys that I grew up with in Pittsburgh. So,
well, Peter, you can feel for these people. I do. Trust me. I probably do things that people would surprise people by helping people out when I encounter them one-on-one. But Venezuela is not an isolated case. We've got so many countries, and especially some of the Asian countries I've visited. The poverty, there isn't any way you're going to walk anywhere because, you're surrounded by water. I think we have to take care of our internal problems here first, and I think shutting down the border, as our president has done. And the other thing that I'm a big advocate for is to have people self-deport, but don't make them leave the country. Put them in a holding cell till you can check them out, find out if they're decent, and let them go back to work, and figure out a formula to work them back in, maybe not to be citizens, but to at least have a green card, pay some taxes, and live with honor and respect. And I've heard that those are things that are being proposed in the White House. This is not going to be a just mass eradication of people because.
Well, no, and I agree. I mean, the whole idea of going to do this is, I think, almost virtually impossible. But they're finding the target demo, and I think that. I mean, look, people voted for Trump. The country voted for Trump. This was one of the tips of the spear, was who was coming in. And you could hear those guys say, when it was Biden, well, my understanding was there were people that believed if they were invited here by Biden. So I don't know.
We heard that for a while, didn't we?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, brother, I got to run. I'm glad for taking my call.
Great call.
All right.
Thank you. Just good calls. Hey, Jay, you're on the radio show. Good afternoon. Thank you. Hey, man.
Hey, Peter, as far as I'm pretty familiar with immigration, my wife's from Thailand. As far as I know, there is no legal way for a peasant, and I'm talking about peasant, I'm using that word purposely, an uneducated peasant, to legally migrate to this country. When people say they need to migrate legally like our ancestors, none of us, all of us who came here between 1880 and 1920 through Ellis Island, none of those, my great-grandparents would be qualified to immigrate today.
But if you understand the waves, they generally came, including my family. It was the famine, the repression of the British, the inability for any moving up a social ladder in a class-filled society. But if you see what happened from the Jews who came more than once, when the Poles came, when the Italians came, when the Sicilians came, when the Greeks came, and the same. I mean, it's just the model is repetitious, and
right. But we need those. There's no way for them to legally come today. That's why we see all the quote illegal.
Oh yeah.
There's no method for a peasant to immigrate today.
Sure.
I think the laws need to be changed. That's what I think.
I'm reading this really interesting book about Joe Colombo, which shows you I got to get a life. You know what Joe Colombo, how do I say this? Why Joe Colombo is significant in the history of organized crime?
I don't know.
He's the first head of a family born in America.
Okay.
And Jimmy Carter was the first American president born in a hospital. And I'm trying to think the first American president who was born an American, because they were all British subjects before. But I love that Joe Colombo was the first Don to be born in America of all the
So also, when you go to Walmart at night, at least my Walmart's here in Douglas County, there's all these workers from Africa, Mauritania, Congo.
Sure.
They're all coming in as refugees, the same as these Venezuelans. They're all coming as refugees. They just don't have they're coming in through the airport, and they don't have the visual for the media of them coming across the border in hordes.
Well said. I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself. Okay. Thank you. What are we doing on time, pal? We're all right? 303-696-1971. We have 2 minutes till we pause. This is Jim. Hey, Jim, we got 2 minutes, and I may bring you back after the break. Go ahead. You're on. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, Peter. A couple things. The whole idea behind staying in Mexico was to vet people that had legit status concerning being allowed into this country versus economic. And so that was in place. So if they're really fearful of their life, they could have stayed in Mexico and applied to America that way. Most of these people didn't cross through the border. They didn't cross through a port of entry. They went through a fence, which shows that they were not really legitimate about how they were approaching this. Did you ask him that question, how they got through here?
I asked him how the guy said he walked over, and then he got into L.A., and he got an airplane, and he came to Denver.
Right. You can go, if you really are legit, you go through a port of entry, and then you
That's
file
what he
the
said.
paperwork.
I
and they're
think,
still doing that now.
No, if I recall, that's what he did say, but I have to go back and listen to it. It was so much going on in the studio. With apologies, if that's what was said, I missed the shot. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way.
No, that's okay. That's quite all right. But I'll also say it. It's not only these Venezuelans. The Triple Administration now has revoked Ukrainians' refugee status as well. Now all those Ukrainians are now being required to go back to Ukraine.
But have you seen what's going on with Ukrainians in Europe? In Europe proper. I got 30 seconds. Jim, thanks. Hang on. We're going to turn around. I'm going to change topics here just a second. Stand by. 710 KNUS. We're Denver's talk station. Here you go. Now, you can only do two things to this kind of music. You can dance or you can fight. But nobody ever makes love to this kind of music. Nobody. Let's have a moment of silence and they play this. This is Dropkick, isn't it? Dropkick Murphy. And it's like we grew up on it. It's the kind of music we all grew up on, but somewhere my father and his brothers on St. Patrick's Day, but it's like, what can you do to that music? And you can fight or you can watch people dance. Short of that, and you can drink. A third person, you can drink to that music. Happy St. Pat's, everyone. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. Irishman himself, Danny Caplis. And Dan suggested, and again, he's my guy, choose a lawyer who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much more about you and everything that's involved with it. And Danny, we talk about it all the time. His dad was a cop in Chicago and former seminarian, and he's just a friend. He's just a great friend. I did his show, and he did this show last Saturday talking about that story that he broke about Columbine High School. He's believed to be the only Colorado lawyer in the history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. He helped my family. Danny's also believed to be the one who won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado. Dan Caplis Law, happy St. Pat's to Dan, official law, and again, the law firm now partners with the Nuggets, Colorado Avs. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. So he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. And if you need Dan's help, 303-770-5551 or hit dancaplisLaw.com. It's CAPLISLaw.com. All right, let's go back to the phones. We'll start with Larry in Inglewood. If you were trying to call the show, we've been jam line since it started. There are now 2 lines open, 303-696-1971. Larry, you're on the show. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Peter. I'm a very conservative person, and I'm really glad that you had the program on that you had today, because I'm tired of people not having the ability to have a civil conversation about anything anymore. And I think that that's a great step forward. It wasn't some ideological slanted approach to things. It was a much more measured, thoughtful approach. The 2 things that really concern me. One, I'm assuming, since you're a well-read person, that you're familiar with the old Bracero program.
Oh, sure. I mentioned it when that was during Eisenhower was Braceros, and that led into Reagan as well.
Yeah, and the problem is it had abuses on both sides.
Oh,
It had abuses mostly because people were unwilling to monitor it, and the side that had the employers didn't crack down on their guys, and the side that were in favor of the immigrants didn't crack down on their side. But it could have worked a lot better, and it could work today. The problem is it's more limited to friendly governments, or at least semi-friendly governments like Mexico. It wouldn't work with Venezuela because they can't go home again.
Well, that's a long trip, too. I mean, if you think the Braceros, the Braceros came over during or in season when it was time to do that.
But they could do it with things like manufacturing or meatpacking, whatever else. I'm disturbed by the fact that the justification for allowing people to come in illegally or otherwise is, we need somebody to clean the bathrooms. That's disgusting.
Well, what it started as an agricultural program, and I think don't hold me to this, but my reading, I think, was under Eisenhower. And
yes, and I don't know why we can't codify acceptable levels of compensation and treatment. I don't have a problem with, because the economies people are coming from are so driven down, it is not impractical that if they aren't being American.
Remember this, and it's like I have nothing else to do, so when America was an agri-economy, as was, most of the world. And so the kinds of things that you and I are talking about weren't necessary. And then after the American Civil War, when the country begins to industrialize, then particularly after the Great American Depression, there used to be the family farm. The family farm at a time period, particularly after the American Revolution and leading up to it, it was the backbone, if you would, of who the country was. We were an agri nation. People, nobody, grandma died at home. We've been over all those different things, and so when they started building these giant agribusinesses, I mentioned Bud Antel and Iceberg and others. Well, the family farm's gone. So there isn't any son to replace a dad to replace a granddad. And that's when they needed the kind of labor that you and I are talking about. And that was the creation. But again, I go back to Hugo Chavez, and they wanted a union, just like steel workers and coal miners and everybody else, and they wanted a union in the fields. And I personally believe that had they been allowed to have that union, a lot of this wouldn't be going on as well. But they broke the union. And I just mentioned this a couple minutes ago, but to me it's kind of funny when there's a march for the rights of illegals and they're carrying the Union flag, the red eagle on the black field, because that wasn't who he was. He didn't believe that.
Exactly, and the part of the problem for me is if we codified things so that there was a program for paying people a lower standard wage than the American minimum wage, understanding they come from economies that are driven clear into the ground, that would be acceptable if we codified it, if we made it part of an acceptable program so that we're helping people. It's like when you used to go to work at McDonald's, so you got your first job and you learned something, but you don't hold people to that for the rest of eternity.
What was interesting, I ride motorcycles and we stopped at a place, Starbucks, and I'm not a big Starbucks guy because I think coffee's too expensive. But they had the strike, and the what they call baristas or something. Yeah. And they were asking for, I don't know what they're asking for. I don't know what their demands are. We just went through the guys that struck out at Safeway, and we went over that about crossing a picket line. I've instilled in my children who have no idea what a union labor job is, but I said, whatever you do, don't ever cross a picket line. I said, you're great.
Yeah, I came from agriculture, and you came from a different one, industrial world, and we're on different sides on many things. But that doesn't mean we can't have a conversation about trying to find out how to solve problems.
The one text, and I think we're coming up on time here again, but the one text, I expect you to have equal time. Jesus, equal time. It's like two things that happened that I always recall. One was we were talking about Kwanzaa, and somebody got really mad and said, that's a man-made religious holiday. I said, they're all man-made religious holidays. What's the difference? And the other one was, how come there's Black History Month? I said, because the other 11 are White History Months. I mean, it's all white guy history. But it's and we've gotten into that thing where you got look at it realistically. But I remember that so well. I think Brother Jeff was on the show or something. We were talking about, and then the guy said, well, that's a man-made religious holiday. And I said, I don't know how to break this to you, but I think they all are. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I think the fact of the matter is if we stop listening to all of the ideologues on both sides and start having a conversation, we'll all be better off.
And it's true in the Middle East. It's true in so many other places. But that's
becoming true here.
That's the point of it, is that I said this earlier, we were talking, I fear that we become the Weimar. And
Very possibly.
And it's, you know, when like they swatted Pags, that talk show host. He's a good guy. He's a good voice. I mean, I like his work. And he got swatted. And Billy and Jeff were talking about it on Friday, and they asked me on the show because the show we were going to do today. And I said, you forget, the ultimate was what happened to Alan. And we had the Klan come to people's houses, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. And if that gears up again, and this time, I think what was done to Pags was done by the left. I don't think it was some conservatives or some lunatics like the guys that took Alan's life. It's a whole different thing.
Alan used to drive me crazy, but I don't think he could have that show today.
But here's the better one. You listened.
Well, of course I listened. Because he kept my heart pumping.
For sure. I told so many people. They said I hated him. I said, you listen every day. That's what we needed.
Exactly.
It's what you learned in pro wrestling. Thank you, Larry, as always. Good call, man. Thanks.
Hey, take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. All right, we go to Gary. How's our time? We good? Gary, you're on the radio show. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Pete. Great show. Thanks for having the guests. And yeah, it's about providing balance, and you certainly did. So I appreciate that.
Well, that's kind.
Overall, Trump is failing on just about everything that he said he was going to do during the election. The one thing that's been successful is cutting off the border immigration. Other than that, everything has been a failure. And specifically about deportation, you might remember that his priority was to first deport 700,000 of felons, dangerous immigrants. And then he was going to move down to people who had deportation orders already. And the lowest priority were going to be people who hadn't had their hearing.
In fairness, remember, the break comes at 100 days. And historians judge the president's first 100 days. Has Trump hit 50 yet? I think he has, but he's halfway there. And
yeah, and
go ahead,
I don't expect he'll come anywhere near his deportation goal. His run rate right now is, in 4 years, he'll have deported 1 million people. In 4 years, 1 million. And this guy, Tom Homan, is starting to make all kinds of excuses about he needs more money. I mean, they can't even identify the felons, the dangerous immigrants. So I expect that'll be a failure at 100 days.
Like I said, 100 days, I've made a couple of deals with people to be on a television panel, but I said, wait till 100 days. It's only fair. One way or the other. One way or the other, it's 100 days.
And Peter, on the guests you had, I remember you and I talking in the locker room of, remember the old Cherry Creek Sporting Club?
Of course.
Yeah, we were there. I think it was in the 90s. You were getting ready to have LASIK surgery on your eyes.
Wow.
And I was telling you I had a lot of success. And you might remember a couple of the gentlemen who cleaned the club were obviously immigrants.
Oh, you can tell.
And they were some of the nicest, most pleasant, hardworking people I've ever met.
The one of those kids was Ethiopian, and
exactly.
He came to dinner at the house a couple of times and brought his friend. No, he was Abdid. His name was Abdid. He was Ethiopian. I remember him very well, and he was going to school, and he was trying to. But there still is this, how much water can you put in a quart? You can put in a quart, but when it goes beyond that, then what do you do? And that's the great, and by the way, this has happened before. This is not the first time. It's like everything else. We're not facing this for the first time. This has been faced many times, and by many countries, by many ethnicities. What do you do?
Yeah, and Peter, I really think the solution is at the state level, not at the federal level. I mean, as long as we have sanctuary cities, this problem is not.
And I couldn't believe it. People said it's not sanctuary city. Nonsense. Wellington Webb declared Denver sanctuary city, and John Hickenlooper, when he was governor, made it sanctuary state.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And the reduction in funding is coming. Just yesterday, Trump's administration decided they're thinking about cutting off all FEMA funding to Colorado and specifically Denver that supports migration. So I hope that actually comes to fruition, because that's the only way. We need to make our state and federal and local politicians pay the price, and unfortunately it'll drip down to us because we pay the bills.
I got music for the break. Thank you. We have one line open, 303-696-1971, 49 for the high today, 62, and one of the boys is in the studio this morning, and all's right in the world. 710 KNUS. Stay right here. $710 KNUS. Good afternoon, everybody. Saturday. It's mountain snow and parade's on, and 49 the high and 62 tomorrow. Hold on, I'm coming. And 70 on Monday. We have two lines open. Really interesting. 303-696-1971. Getting a lot of fire back on what the radio show was about today. We'll go to Jeff in Golden. Jeffrey, thank you. You're on the air. Good afternoon.
How are you doing today? Good show.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty brave of you, I guess. You know what I mean? A lot of guys, right, giving you trouble.
I thought the brave guys were the guys that came on, not me.
True. You know, it was good to listen to him. I don't know, some of the stuff, when you asked him if he paid that airline when they flew him or whatever, and I actually, I've gone through, I have a small detail business, you know what I mean, that I've been, without these guys, I've gone through probably 15 different guys, and I finally got a really good guy to help me now, you know what I mean, but I noticed, and I've had guys helping me, I went to college out in California in Santa Barbara, and I heard about the radio station out there, which, that's kind of crazy.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But the guy this last bunch, it does seem there's a little more sense of entitlement with them. I've had guys get just straight up, you give them a job and this and that, and man, if you're not getting to that $20 an hour, you know what I mean? If the guy doesn't know what he's doing, and because it's not always, I do mechanical work and stuff too, and some of the stuff is, you got to sit and I got to teach you, a little bit, and I don't know. I just have noticed in this last few years that and these guys, and I really did take guys down in federal, a couple, 3 different times. He needed to get a phone, and they knew how to get a free phone. You know what I mean? So, and I hung out in one of those free hotel rooms, and you know what I mean? There was a lot of freebies that these guys got, and those guys he had on really kind of were saying, oh no, I've paid for everything, I'm paying taxes, and I don't know as if I believed all that.
Well, once again, you take someone at their word.
Right.
Some pretty nasty things were said. I read some pretty nasty ones on the air, but there's text messaging on this board that's far worse than that. One of the interesting things about this, and it again, it's a spring away, but it is ethnicity. And I've often said that if it's whose ox, and the only one I could relate to on generational levels when the Irish came. And, nobody is going to have a worse time than when Africans were brought here. That's the consummate.
Right.
And then on the other side, nobody was impacted more than Native people. So you put them on if you have a measure, you put the Native people on one side and Africans on the other, you got to fit someplace in the middle. When the Italians came, the Sicilians came, when the Jews came, when the Irish came, when the Greeks came, everybody took their turn in the barrel. But this is a different boogie because often, the time frames that you're talking about, I'm talking about, there was no rules, there were no guards. There were after the Second World War. The Japanese and Asians were done. It was called the Gentleman's Agreement. It was Teddy Roosevelt, and they kept the Japanese out. That's a day of mourning in Japan. There's different people. Once again, it depends on whose ox. But if you're,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
And this is the story, I mean, my family came from Germany, and I'm pretty sure that my great-grandfather, when he got here, he was only here for maybe a year or so, and they shipped him back to Germany to fight World War I.
Absolutely.
And so I asked on one of those, I wonder, and not to say that this would happen, but what if we were to, some of these guys say, hey, we want to fight against the cartel. I wonder if they would agree to join our military to fight the cartel.
Well, that was part of having people join and then return. The Irish they were just tricked into it. They got off the boats, and the gangs in New York is really a well-portrayed moment with the Irish getting off the boat and then getting recruited into the Union Army. They had no idea. And also then, because I read the history of the Irish, when they were recruited in the Army, and remember in the Mexican War, and they went in the Union Army, they went to invade Mexico. And when they got there and they found out that, number one, the Mexicans were Catholics, and as you may not think that's important, but it was. And so many of them changed sides. And there's a book called, I read it, but it was about how the members of the Union Army, because it was the only army, went over and joined the Mexicans, simply for that reason. And you can see that in different parts of the world all the time. Ireland, once again, places in this country. So nothing that you and I are witnessing right now is new. If anybody thinks this has never happened before, it's happened before. And that theory that there are only X amount of themes, there's only X amount of, between the Old Testament, Shakespeare comedies, Shakespearean tragedies, Greek comedies, Greek tragedies in the Old Testament. There are no other themes. Everything that you're watching right now has happened before. And
that was a good show you had, hopefully, guys.
Well, we'll find out.
I mean, I just hope that the guys that are working, because there's so many of the guys are honest and working, and you know what I mean? And hopefully they want to stick around. Sometimes sending that money down south is a little hard too, because it's like, no, let's try to keep it here, and and hopefully they want to stay.
But that's age old as well, sending money home.
Right.
Again, and even when you read even medieval Europe, the people who came, and oftentimes the guys came with swords, but they still came. As I get older and older and read more and more, and I see these patterns that exist and will exist again. And so this is just our segment right now.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you, buddy. Glad to hear you still going.
Man, I'm getting a lot of calls about an update on the cranes. So how close are we? 2 minutes. 2 minutes? For the second time, I went to see the cranes migrate in a place called Kearney, Nebraska. And I knew a little bit more about that. Has been stunning. And the cranes were the cranes, and they just still blow your mind. And this time everybody got smart enough to get up earlier and watch the cranes go up. So, yeah, the cranes are doing this. Peter, your views seem to have changed since the time when Donnie Young was murdered. No, when Donnie Young was murdered, he was murdered by an illegal, a dishwasher working for the mayor when the mayor owned, what's it called in Cherry Creek, the bar in Cherry Creek, Cricket. And a guy, and we did a fundraiser which eventually becomes MC1, the Honor Run, which also becomes Emily's Parade. I don't know if my views have changed. I mean, we do it every year. We fundraise for fallen officers. I don't know. People want to institutionalize that into the radio show. The purpose of this show that happened this morning was not unlike the purpose of the Palestinian shows. You want to hear them? Hear them. You remember that's the interesting thing about radios. There's on and off switches. I've always believed that. And the fellow brought up Berg about how many years he listened to Alan Berg and hated him. Dude, if I'm reading a book anymore, if I get about the first 100 pages in and say, this book sucks, I'm getting a new book. Here we go. 710 KNUS for the first time. Lines are open. Tell me what you thought about those guys this morning. 710 KNUS Radio Free Denver. It is this morning.